It's 4:04 p.m. and the regular session of the Planning Commission of the City of Lancaster will please come to order. Tonight, or this afternoon I should say, it's not quite night yet, the invocation will be offered by Vice Chair Hall and the pledge will be led by Commissioner Mercy. If you'd all please stand.
I pray in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Thank you, Father, for allowing us to have the time to have this meeting. It seems so simple that this meeting is, that I'm thankful for it, but it shows that we're able to meet, improve our communities. Staff was able to prepare for this. Important information is going to be given to the rest of the community, and I appreciate the ability to have that freedom in this country. I pray for our first responders, our fire and our police. I pray for our fellow commissioners that are healing from injuries and far-flung activities. And I pray for our soldiers and their families as they serve far away from home. And I pray in your name, Father and Son and Holy
Amen.
Spirit.
Thank you.
Amen.
Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May I have the roll call, please?
Diana Cook, absent. Cassandra Harvey,
Present.
Vice Chair Hall,
Here.
Chairman Vose,
Here.
Commissioner Mercy,
Here.
Commissioner Moore, absent. Commissioner Smith, absent.
Commissioner Moore is
Have a
running a
quorum.
little late. I expect he'll arrive shortly.
Okay.
Commissioner Cook is recovering from an injury. And I'm not going to say where Commissioner Smith is. She's having more fun than we are, that's for sure, on vacation.
She was far-flung.
That's right, yeah. I got a message from her today saying that she was so sad that she couldn't join us this afternoon. That's a big fib, by the way. I heard nothing from her, not a word.
She's going to miss Amazon Prime Day.
That's right, I've heard that. Public business from the floor. If any person would like to address the commission on any agendized item, it's requested that you please fill out a speaker's card for the recording secretary identifying the item you'd like to speak on. And each person then will be given an opportunity to speak when the item is called, typically after staff presentation. Speaker cards are at the rear of the chamber. Bit of the rules of the road. The first item on our agenda today is a presentation, but after that we will continue on with the items on the agenda. Typically, action items are the opportunity for the staff to make a presentation to the commission, as well as applicants and or their representatives have an opportunity to present as well. And then the public has an opportunity to offer their comments and testimony, typically 3 minutes, as I pointed out. And then the applicant is offered an opportunity to rebut. And then at the end of that, the commission will either deliberate, take an action, or not. So that's how it works here. You'll notice we didn't swear you in. In the County of Los Angeles Commission, they swear everybody in, which is kind of odd because I don't think you're allowed to do that under state law. But what do I know? Maybe we should start that. That way everybody will tell the truth. Well, maybe not. Okay. New business. So we're having a presentation today and a discussion on the issues of valley fever. So who's up first?
Hi there. My name is Alicia Pucci, and I'm a public health nurse with Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you.
You get as much time as you'd like.
Oh, okay. So I do have a presentation that's up on the screens, and who's advancing the slides, or do I have my own clicker, or? Okay, they're bringing it to me. Okay, so I work for the Acute Communicable Disease Control Program. So valley fever is a reportable disease. Yes? Oh, okay, so I've got a pointer. Okay, so we'll advance till the next slide. Okay, so just a little bit of background. So valley fever, it's coccidioidomycosis, which I've said that once, so from now on I'll just refer to it as cocci or valley fever. And it's caused by the Coccidioides immitis fungus. This is a soil dwelling. It's found in the top 12 inches or so of alkaline soil in warm, arid regions. And the fungus exists in two phases. So the mold grows in the soil, and then the spores form and survive in the dry soil. The spores will become airborne if the soil is disrupted, and then humans inhale those spores, animals as well. Okay, so next slide, please.
Do you mind if we ask you questions as you go?
Yeah, you can stop me and ask me questions, sure.
I did very poorly in biology and chemistry,
Okay,
so I appreciate the small words and definitions as you go along. Commissioner Moore is joining us. So you said basically animals are affected by the risk of, is it called Kochi? Is that how you pronounce it?
oh, cocci?
Kochi?
Yes.
Animals are, so no other living creature is infected with this potential?
So, so my understanding with working with the veterinarians at our public health department is that any mammal can be affected by cocci. Dogs get that, and LA County's veterinary department actually tracks the number of dogs that contract and are reported for having cocci. And then my job is to follow the reports of humans that are infected by cocci. And then beyond that, I personally don't know of any other
All right, thank you.
sort of living creature that
Thank
would,
you.
besides mammals, yes.
So it's a reportable disease like a STD?
Correct, and I'll touch on that in just a moment, but the answer to your question is yes, it is a
This-
reportable disease within Los Angeles County.
Would being a reportable disease then make people want to avoid reporting it?
No, it wouldn't necessarily make people want to avoid reporting it. No, I don't see, I've never heard somebody say, I want to avoid reporting cocci. I mean, any healthcare provider, as well as a lab, Title 22 of the California Code makes them have to report. You must report this. So we have several different mechanisms to deliver those reports to us, and I'll touch on that in a slide as well. But any healthcare provider, including a registered nurse, a pharmacist, an infection preventionist, the physician treating the patient, are all accountable and must report.
So what that basically means in a nutshell is more than likely you do have the valid numbers in this area if they've seen a physician, because it's not protected by HIPAA. Is that correct? So I think that's
What isn't
where.
protected by HIPAA?
Knowing those numbers is not protected. I don't know if that's where Vice Chair was going with that.
Okay, so public health, we are allowed to look at those medical records. They're all reported to our department. So while you might not be able to go and ask a hospital for that information, we can. And so all of those reports come into our department and are looked at for a variety of diseases, and cocci just happens to be one of them, and the disease that I follow and do surveillance for.
So the reporting requirements have been in effect for how long?
That's a good question. I think it's from 1955, I want to say it became a reportable disease. Do you guys happen to know that date off the top of your head? Yeah, I want to say it's from 1955. It's been a reportable disease, so for quite some time.
And I would imagine you'll go through the statistical reporting for this area. There's probably some numbers for this area on how many have been reported and that.
So I'm going to touch and show you quite a few numbers, and
Okay,
that
good.
to LA County in general, but I've also broken it down to the Antelope Valley specifically.
Good. We'll quit interrupting.
No worries.
Oh.
All good questions. You said I have as much time, so. Okay, so this is just a little brief overview of the ecology of Coxsey. I do have some colleagues with me, so if you start to ask any in-depth environmental type questions, I'll defer to them. So just talking about the distribution in the soil. So asking, where is Coxsey found? I already told you it was found in soil. So which soil? Where is it found? Well, there's no feasible way to tell what soil is contaminated. There's been different studies that do test the soil, but we could be standing on, this much of ground, like I'm standing here, and that you could test the soil here and find it and test the soil 5 feet away and it won't be there. There is an Arizona study that shows human disease is linked with rain. And so there's a relationship with rainfall. If you recall the first slide, I said that the ground needs to be moist, so those conditions, if it's a fungus, so for it to grow, for it to be moist to grow, and then of course the ground wants to be dry in order for it to blow and spread. Some dust storm events are followed by peaks of illness and others not. So you can't say every time that there's a dust storm we see more disease. Some construction sites are linked with outbreaks and others are not. And advance the slide, please. I'm not sure if I included. There was a study done. Let me see if I get to it, but just to say that there was a study done on 2 construction sites very close to one another, and you would expect that the one that, actually one was not a construction site and one was a construction site, and they were very close to each other, and you would suspect that the place that was doing the construction would report more disease, and they didn't. So I don't know if I have that slide in here, but just to mention it. And this is going back to reporting the cases. So cases are reportable to LA County. Different diseases have different requirements. So you must report within 7 days. Again, this is reported to us 2 different ways. Laboratory is mandated by the law to report to us, and so is a healthcare practitioner. So oftentimes we'll both get the lab that does the resulting of the test report to us, as well as a physician or an infection preventionist at the same facility. And next slide. Okay, so talking about some of the symptoms. Most people that get valley fever, in fact about 60%, won't even know that they have the disease. So they'll have no clinical symptoms whatsoever. The 40% that do get symptoms, they're going to present with flu-like symptoms. So a fever, hence the name valley fever, a cough. Many present with pneumonia, so you'll go to your physician and the physician might think, oh, you have all the presentations of pneumonia. A rash would be if that disease has spread outside of the lungs. So if it's disseminated outside the lungs, it might present as a rash. If you have a chest x-ray done, if your physician orders that with the suspect of pneumonia, they might see the nodules or cavities within the lungs. And then again, that disseminated disease is when it leaves the lungs and it affects the bones, the joints, abdominal organs. There also might be effects to the brain, and that's in very severe case. Any questions so far? Okay, next slide. Yes.
It's not that I'm not paying attention. I have a screen here. I can see it better
Okay.
than that. So
No worries.
I'm trying to follow it along. So if a physician is not properly trained and analyzes a patient as a primary infection, and it presents the same symptoms as a bronchial infection, pneumonia, that type of a thing, more often than not, it may be misdiagnosed.
That's correct. So if a physician treats the patient for pneumonia, the typical treatment would be a course of antibiotics, which of course will not treat cocci because it's a fungal disease. So the patient may typically seem to appear to get better, but then still continue to have the symptoms of illness. So oftentimes, if reviewing the medical records, we'll see that. So the patient was treated for pneumonia with an antibiotic, and then will come back for a subsequent visit, be worked up again, perhaps a specialist called in, an infectious disease physician will then see the patient, and then prescribe antifungals. So it does require education.
So to properly analyze it through laboratory analysis, you'd really need to do biopsies, right?
Good question. So there is a blood test. I don't know if I have a slide on it, so I'll speak to it now. So you don't need to do a biopsy. There is a blood test that can be done, and that's how most of our cases are identified to us. So if, let's say, just following your same scenario, that patient comes back after being treated for pneumonia and they don't get better, and now the physician is thinking, okay, what else could it possibly be? And they might run a battery of tests, and then one of them including cocci, it would come back positive.
So your typical workup for a physician for either your typical annual blood test one might get with broad spectrum analysis would not pick up any signs of this disease. It would be a special blood test.
That's correct. So your normal
is that
blood,
expensive?
isn't it? I don't know the cost of the test as for the blood test and what insurance pays. But let me just follow up with this line of questioning, which is a normal set of laboratory tests that are ordered for your, as you said, a physical. You're looking at some very generalized blood work. The cocci lab would be ordered primarily by an ID physician, an infectious disease physician, who's looking for something out of the ordinary. And the reason that somebody wouldn't order a cocci test to begin with for other reasons is many of us, as I said in this room, 60% of people have had cocci but don't ever present with symptoms. And so, for instance, I travel up here. I don't live up here, but I've come up here and I've been exposed. Actually, anybody in LA County has been exposed to cocci. So if I have ever had the disease, it's going to present that way in my blood. And once you've had it, you're immune to it, so you're not going to get it again. It presents a little bit differently of how that result comes back, and we can tell if it's an acute or an infection that's happening right now, or if it happened in the distant past. So it's not
So if you survive it, you'll never get it again?
correct.
And you said it was an infectious disease, but it's not infectious from people
Correct. Yes, so it's not
animals.
spread from person to person
or animals. So
or animals to animals.
so once you're sick, you're not Typhoid Mary.
No, you cannot spread it to another human being.
Okay.
And so the next slide.
Go ahead.
Okay, so how do we diagnose? I touched on this a little bit. Most persons with respiratory disease are not tested or treated. The illness is just going to resolve on its own. It does require an antifungal drug. Currently, fluconazole is the treatment of choice. Let's see, if the pneumonia or what seems to be pneumonia persists, then from antibiotics, or there's a suspicion of disseminated disease, then there might be further examination or tests done of the patient. And then the CD estimates that there's about 150,000 cases a year that go undiagnosed. Okay, next slide.
Is that worldwide, you're saying?
So I don't know if I included a slide that shows where cocci happens, but it's really endemic to the southwest of California. There are cases in Mexico and South America as well, and we've seen cases recently in the state of Washington, but that's pretty much where it's contained to. So we
Eastern
don't-
Washington,
I'm sorry?
Eastern Washington State,
Yeah, Eastern Washington State, yes.
the eastern portion, the dry portion, huh?
Yes. So, but the rest of the world isn't, so those CDC numbers would be for the states that, that the disease is endemic to.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there any recorded deaths? Because I work on a construction site, and they do this valley fever thing also, and it's real bad. I've had a friend that caught it, and it was real detrimental to him. And I know there's some death, and I noticed that you don't have any. I know it's not that high, but it's not. I don't see it up here as far as
So
the
it's,
recorded deaths.
it's a good question. It's very difficult to capture the deaths caused by valley fever because usually people that end up dying that also have valley fever have a lot of other disease with them, so many other comorbidities. So it's very rare to see on a death certificate that this patient died of valley fever. So could they have valley fever and it disseminated and some other complications happen and they went into respiratory failure and they died? Yes, but to see it come as death from valley fever, we don't capture that. And most of the highly endemic regions, which would be Arizona and Kern County, that see the most amount of cases, don't review medical records. So and in fact, LA County no longer reviews medical records as of 2017. The burden of the reporting of the disease is so great that California as a state is moving as a whole to not reviewing medical records. Okay, so some risk factors for infection and severe disease. So the graph is just showing you by age group. So 65 and plus is routinely the demographic for age that we see getting infection. You may have heard that certain demographics, such as African American and Filipino, are more apt to get the disease, but this is a little incorrect to say that they're going to get the disease as so much as they're going to have severe disease. So that dissemination. So it's not that African American, Filipino, Native Americans get the disease more frequently. It's that we see them getting severe disease and becoming disseminated. Same thing with pregnant women. So it's not all pregnant women, but pregnant women in their third trimester may get severe disease or are more likely to get severe disease, along with, like many other disease, if you have a weakened immune system. And then also that top bullet point under infection, living in a high-risk area. So if you live in the Antelope Valley, you live in a high-risk area. If you grew up here, like I said, you may have already had the disease and didn't know it. But if you just moved here, then you might be more susceptible to getting the disease. And next slide. Okay, so just a few facts about Los Angeles County. So this map is broken up into 8 service planning areas. This is how the Department of Public Health, just how we sort of arrange the areas within LA County. There's over 10 million people that live here, covering 5,000 square miles. And the service planning area, or I'll call it from now on SPA. SPA 1 is where we currently are. That's the Antelope Valley. The overall LA County incident rate for cocci has continued to increase over the last 10 years, and it's tripled since 2010. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a graph showing you the increase of the frequency and the rate over the past 10 years. So as you can see, in, let's see, 2017, actually I have the latest, I didn't update this graph, so sorry. But so for 2017, which has already ended, we saw over 900 cases of valley fever reported and confirmed to us. And that is, as you can see, continuing to grow.
On the testing like that, is it possible that the increase is due to more awareness and more testing for the disease, and maybe the 60% that were unsymptomatic are not being diagnosed, and now they are suddenly?
Yes, so you'd make a fabulous epidemiologist. It's great thinking, and that's how we think too. We would love to know, it's not just LA County, it's the whole state is seeing an increase in cocci, and we want to understand why. And we're looking at several variables that can contribute to that, and I'm going to touch on that in a minute. But, you know, it would be, I know it sounds weird to say I would hope that this is what's causing increased numbers. I mean, nobody wants to see numbers increasing, but wouldn't it be wonderful if the reason the numbers were increasing is because there was more awareness and because there was more physicians testing for it?
Seems counterintuitive. We haven't had a construction glut in the last 10 years.
Right, but again, we can't, although we'd like to say this construction causes this amount of disease, you can't definitively say that. So you can look, and there's been papers published actually from physicians and epidemiologists from LA County Department of Public Health saying this may be a correlation from the housing boom. I think it was in 2003 here, is that correct? 2003, 2004? But we can't say for sure. So when we see an increase like this, we come together, all the counties in the state of California, we come together and we work and try to find out why. Why are the numbers increasing? And I have a slide that's going to give another slant and maybe another hypothesis on why things are increasing, why numbers are increasing.
I can't read it clearly, but the number of reported cases in 2017, and it's so many per 100,000. Is that what that is?
Okay, yes. So on the bars are showing you the number of cases,
Right.
and then the line going across is showing you the rate.
So that's Los Angeles County, or
Los Angeles County.
Only.
Now, the state also publishes for all the entire state, the numbers and the rates.
so SPA 1 ends at the county line at the north, right?
Correct.
And we have a larger community to the north in Kern County,
Correct.
where a number of those citizens might seek medical treatment here in Lancaster and Palmdale. So, do you track where people live and
Yes.
do all that stuff?
Yes, so any patient that's reported to us for any disease, we base if there are count, not by where they were seen, but by where they live, so where their address is. So if that patient is reported and they don't have an address, we take the time to find out what their address is, and then that county gets that patient. And then the state does a further deduplicating process where they take a look at all counties and everybody that's reported. So sometimes our numbers don't exactly match because maybe the state sees things and it's been reported, the same person's been reported 3 different times.
I'm shocked the state would view things differently than
Yeah.
real people.
Well, I can only speak for LA County, and we're very diligent about our case count and make sure that that patient does indeed live in LA County at the time that they were reported for disease.
So have any of your studies then broken down the statistics sub-regionally?
Yes, so let's advance the next slide. We do look, and it's published, I can advance? I'm sorry? Okay, I don't need a pointer, just advance it. Okay, perfect, thank you. I have control, yay. Okay, so let's see, so SPA 1, okay, so this is answering your question, and I'll break it down even farther. So remember, SPA 1 is Antelope Valley. There you are highlighted in yellow. It's consistently reported the highest incidence of cocci in LA County. And in 2006, which is our most recent published report, the incident rate was 53.8 per 100,000, which is an increase from 2015 rate of 42.6 per 100,000. We also break it down, of course, by age, by gender. So this shows that 69% were male, 30% female. We do break it down even farther to answer your question. So there's 8 service planning areas. All of them see COXI cases, and that's available to anybody through our annual morbidity report that's published online.
Thank you.
So here we go. We've broken it down by SPA. So this is, again, answering your question, but in a graph form instead of a map. So if you look at that one that's reaching high up past 50, on its way to 60, that's SPA 1. So this gives you a comparison across all the other SPAs. SPA 5 is like downtown LA. So you might say, oh, there's COXI happening, cases in downtown LA. Yes, it's all over LA County. We have a lot more pavement in downtown LA than you guys have up here. Could be one reason we don't see as many. So that's broken down by your SPA. We also took a look just to see the different areas. San Fernando Valley and the West Valley are in an area called SPA 2. So we do see cases there. In fact, that's a large population of the dogs that are seen by our vets are found in SPA 2, just as a little side note. But of course, you can see Antelope Valley, SPA 1, again, the numbers increasing over that time spread of 2001 to 2015. And then this is the same as the first slide I showed you, except we're comparing Antelope Valley to LA County. So the LA cases all totaled are in blue, that blue bar, and then the Antelope Valley cases are right there alongside of it in the maroon bar. So that's just broken down, showing you Antelope Valleys. We also look at seasonality. All of this, again, is available for anybody to look at on our website for the annual morbidity report. And not just for COXI, but for all of the diseases that we follow. You can see this information there. So looking how it tends to peak in those September, October months, but not always. Okay, so here comes the question that Mr. Hall, yes, Hall, asked, which is why are these numbers increasing? So we have some things that we can think at, and we do look at. Increased population, so new residents in the high-risk areas. So going back to that one paper that was published, could it be that there's more construction and more dust is flying and that's why there's more disease? Or is it that there's more construction, which means more people are moving here and they're new to the area and so they're more prone to getting the disease? Could it be education? Could it be increased dust exposure? Could it be more people are outside hiking or digging? And then the third bullet point, it says 76% increase in ELR. ELR stands for electronic lab reporting. So I'm going to have a slide to explain this in a moment, but it used to be that a lab would have to report to us, mechanically, a piece of paper, they fax it in, they call us. We have increasingly been working with the hospitals in LA County to report to us automatically. So when a lab is resulted, it's just one system talking to another system. And since 2015, one of the facilities that started reporting this way is here in the Antelope Valley. It's one of the hospitals in the Antelope Valley. Some other things to think about: agricultural practices and expansion, drought, other changes in climate. Here's a image just to show you the way that people report, how many reports come in like this, and how it corresponds to the electronic lab reporting. So this inset in black shows you in 2011, this is how many labs we had in LA County reporting directly to us, meaning, again, it's automated. No person has to do it. It comes straight to us. Then you can see this spike starting in 2014 that shows the amount of labs that have come on board. So we would expect, if that's the case, we should see more disease being reported. and that it should correspond with more hospitalizations. But we don't. So why again? What's happening? Well, could it be education? Could it be more people maybe aren't getting so sick that they have to be hospitalized? Maybe they're going into their physician. Maybe physicians are getting educated. We do provide education to physicians. We just had a co-sponsored event with Kaiser, Antelope Valley, and there was about 60 physicians and registered nurses there to learn how to recognize and be able to test for COXI. So not really sure, but it could be because there's better reporting. We're seeing more numbers. And remember, again, this isn't just isolated in Los Angeles County. This is, for the most part, across the state that's seeing greater numbers. Shall I pause or keep going?
I'd like you to pause for just a moment
Yes.
because those are lagging indicators. How do we get in front of it? Commissioner Moore, working in construction, how do we get those folks educated?
So
As opposed to having lagging, let's be more strategic as opposed to tactical, right?
So it's a great question, and the state does work with they have a publication, which I'm glad to hear that is being utilized. LA County took that same publication and branded our own name on it with their permission. But it's difficult, right? Because there's no mandate to say you have to educate your employees on COXI per se. The more that I'm out there talking to our public works department and to other companies that I hear, yes, we are educating. Like, again, it's great to hear that that's happening. But I think that involves a larger public health issue that goes, unfortunately, it goes beyond my department. Again, I'm doing passive surveillance on a disease, so I only see the numbers after the disease has already come, but that's always the question. How do we engage the public? How do we educate? So one of the ways that we can educate is not just construction workers, but within our department, I asked the same question. And I turned and I thought about my 4th grade daughter, and I thought all the things she comes home and tells me about. And I said, this is a really untapped resource. Perhaps we can educate children that will go back and educate their parents. So I did a literature review. There isn't a lot of literature on this. It was successfully done with a group of diabetic children and their parents, but those were patients that already had a disease. So, but it's okay. It gave me something to look at. And subsequently, we created the first youth-oriented COXI health education materials that I've actually piloted at my daughter's school, and it corresponded with a book that they read with the character actually gets valley fever. So I'm hoping that we can spread that same curriculum into the Antelope Valley, and I met some wonderful people that sit on the board at our CME event. So education is key. Things like community events. We recently had a symposium that was put on by one of your community groups here, and another one that will be coming up soon. But education is always key.
I guess I just find it curious in the state of California, we're a nanny on everything else, and I think we owe construction workers at least that consideration, looking out for their best interest from a health perspective. I'm curious to find out, what is Cal OSHA? How does that weave into this? So if I'm a construction worker, I'm on the site, and now I've come down with valley fever. Is it recordable from a Cal OSHA perspective, or how does that work? Do we know?
So I'm not, if there's somebody else that can you guys speak to Cal OSHA questions better than I?
Could be like a work injury.
So I have 2 colleagues with me. Can you speak to this or no?
Oh, I'll speak.
Okay.
Briefly. Hi, my name is Robert Vasquez. I'm industrial hygienist.
Good afternoon, Robert.
Good afternoon. LA County Public Health. And we have limited experience in dealing with Cal OSHA. But Cal OSHA, as you know, is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, state regulators overseeing workers. So I believe there is if there's a work-related injury, needs to be reported to Cal OSHA. But I don't want to speak for Cal OSHA, but from my understanding is, if there's a work complaint, they can file a complaint with Cal OSHA. and I believe Cal OSHA would decide whether or not they would respond. But as far as some program that's proactive where they're engaging the workers, for example, as providing some kind of awareness or instruction, I'm not aware of that.
Well, this commission has and continues to impose conditions upon development that mirror the recommendations that in our staff report today. And we've done that on larger projects, including the education component, the requirement for respirators, the appropriate, what we consider at least appropriate. However, and we're trying to be proactive in that, but we're a little bit behind the curve. That's why we invited you folks to come share with us. I know, what was it? Antelope Valley Partners for Health, I guess, conducted a symposium recently here. None of us were aware of that, so we couldn't avail ourselves the opportunity to participate. However, this commission is very interested in this issue, have been for a long time. We've heard from a lot of people in the community. You know, we don't know what's right and what isn't, so we're very grateful that you're here to share with us. So, but the Cal OSHA point is...
Yeah, as I said before, not to, at the risk of repeating myself, I just think looking at lagging indicators as data does little to no help for the community. It says this is the data analytics, but what are we doing about it? We need to be in front of it before we have those cases.
Right.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is just talking about construction and COXI. So not always will this will construction correlate with disease. I mentioned earlier that there was these two campuses, one with construction and one not, and how the one campus with construction should have seen more disease, but it didn't. And then the occupational exposure. So workers engaged in soil disrupting activities, endemic areas are all at risk for COXI. So again, all of these people should be receiving, as you stated, they should be receiving education on COXI. We have an 8-page booklet. It's available for free from the state or from us, from LA County. This
Includes agricultural as well, right?
Correct.
I mean,
yes, agricultural workers, geologists, firefighters.
Well, before there was development, before there was agriculture, when it was just plain dirt, it existed, right?
Correct. So
Now, I don't know if Kit Carson got it, but he could have.
Could have, yes.
They claim he came through here and...
Yes, there's, I cannot recall off the top of my head the very first discovery, but it was actually in Argentina, not here. But yes, anybody any mammal, again, can get COXI. And again, 60% of us may have had it.
I noticed you pointed out military personnel. Do you keep... does Edwards and the rest of the military bases out here report?
So
It's in
Edwards,
Kern.
right? Edwards isn't on LA County. However, they do have some civilians that live in LA County and work on the base. So off and on throughout the year, I do have communication with the public health nurse that's on the base. Yep.
It'll be interesting to look at that correlation of airmen and others that work there in relationship to the civilian population.
It would be. It's very
If you could
tricky
figure out
when
how
it
to get your
comes
arms
to-
around it.
Yeah, it's a little bit tricky working,
Yeah,
but it would be an interesting study.
'cause that's what is it, 10,000 people work there? A little less than 10,000. I'm not sure how many airmen are there, about 6,000, I think, isn't it? Something like that. And that's a huge population.
Yeah.
Interesting. I have an airman in my family. They're not stationed there, so I'm just a little concerned about that as I'm thinking about it.
Oh, well, I hope that everybody in this room goes home and discusses Coxie over the dinner table tonight. I just had a discussion on the train this weekend, a woman that lives up here and was taking it down to Union Station to pick up her car, and she had just moved up here less than a year ago, and so I had an opportunity to educate her right there on the train. So, okay, so dust mitigation, again, a suggestion, and education, all think about all the different varieties of ways that we can educate this our workers, and that on the right is the 8-page booklet. Public and physician education. So prevention, what are you going to do? You live here, right? So I think of this as the same thing as the sun. The sun's there, we put sunscreen on, but can we just not breathe? No. But we can think about staying inside during dust storms. We can think about educating others that maybe they've recently been in a high-risk situation, digging on a job or in a dust storm, and now that they have that cough and fever, and perhaps they want to mention that to their physician when they go in and when they're seen. We even created a flyer that's specifically for the Antelope Valley that can be put into physicians' waiting rooms, reaching out to these high-risk demographic to say, hey, if you're feeling this, perhaps ask your physician. So we've also, like I told you, partnered with Kaiser and recently did a physician and registered nurse education so that when the patients are being seen, this can be thought of. Let's think about Coxie. Diagnosis and treatment, so we want to focus on high-risk groups. And then early diagnosis and treatment of pneumonia. Kaiser up here is actually in the middle of doing a study looking at the early diagnosis and treatment of pneumonia.
So what about those from a lower socioeconomic? If we find out, I know we talked about earlier, Chairman Vos posed the question as far as the costs for testing. What are we doing for those from a lower socioeconomic that may not be able to afford a special test? Is there something that the state is looking into doing to providing testing for those people?
That's a good question, and I'm not really sure I can answer that. I know within LA County, what is a big push with our agency right now is health equity and making sure that everybody is that the health is available to all. But as far as how things are billed and how people are seen, I can't speak to how that is occurring.
That's fair, okay.
And okay, so conclusions to what we know and don't know. So we know that the cases have increased since 2000. We know that due to undiagnosed and unreported cases, the true disease burden, this is like that iceberg. We see the tip, and what's underneath the water is probably great. Dust and occupational exposures increase the risk overall. Impact of land use environmental changes is unclear. Again, you can read some studies that suggest and think one way, but we can't say for certain. And then increased education and prevention, especially among high-risk groups. This may reduce disease, but the feasibility of behavior change is unclear. So just like I said, it's great. I could reach all fourth graders in this county, and they could go back and half of them could tell their parents. But will I ever be able to measure if my efforts affected the burden of disease? I cannot, which as an epidemiologist, as a nurse, I would love to be able to say yes and publish that paper, and I cannot. But it will not stop our efforts to continue with education on the disease.
Do you ever foresee a future where the technology in figuring out how the disease is transported leads to abatement protocols?
I think it requires a lot of discussion. I don't know if you guys can answer that a little bit better. Would you like to address that question, or? Yeah. Okay.
Hi, so my name is Evanor Masis, and I'm industrial hygienist.
Can you say your name again? Slow.
Evanor Masis, like Evanor.
Eleanor?
Yeah, Evanor, with a V.
Good afternoon, welcome.
Thank you. So one of the problems with technology and the detection of the environmental conditions that induce the particular fungi is the uncertainty. Here we're dealing with a living organism, so there's not a systematic approach to understanding how the fungi behaves in the environment. So that's one of the biggest problems, that uncertainty. So you could have all the technology that you want, but you have to look at the system from a general perspective, meaning it's not just one point, one source, but we're looking at several thousand miles, square miles, where the fungi can survive and live. So having said that, it's a very touchable problem that we have. So we have to do a lot more research to find out the best technologies that could be applicable for the detection.
So it might be a few years before we're going like lead abatement and things like that, or asbestos abatement.
Absolutely, yes.
So you don't foresee some kind of bright ultraviolet light on the bottom of the machinery out there killing off the little spores?
It's just like, think about this, just like the fungi that you find at home, where you can apply all kinds of different solutions, like chlorine. There could be physical barriers. You can have all kinds of different abatement processes. But the fungi is still there.
I have a built-in swimming pool. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So it's the same. It's pretty much the same conditions, but at bigger scale. So you can think about how difficult it is to establish the dose-response relationship between exposure, the pathway of exposure, and your infection.
So the
Different
protocols
variables.
to attempt to identify the locations of active spores or inactive spores in the soil, similar to what Department of Toxic Substances Control protocols use to identify contaminated soils of various types. If I understand everything I've heard and read over the last several years, trying to understand this issue, and as she spoke, you can identify a plot of ground 5 foot square with spores, and 5 feet away, nothing.
Correct. Right.
So it seems like testing would be ineffective because it's random, and you certainly couldn't test. And if you did test, then what? If you determine, let's just say we determined this is the development site where the well here is the development site, and we've determined that there's a portion of it, or all of it for that matter, then what?
Right. So
Then what?
exactly, and that's why we call the relationship between infection and your exposure pathway. So we have that relationship. We can't tell you 100%.
So in another 25 years, they'll have enough, assuming you got enough money and people, come up with potential solutions.
Yeah, my understanding is that JPL and NASA are already working on satellite imagery to trying to determine where the most likely places are where you can find these specific fungi, and then through aerial photography, maybe try to understand patterns of movement, of air movement. And there's a lot of environmental factors that are not clearly understood yet on how effective the transport mechanisms for these fungi may affect your environmental quality.
I don't know if I'm better educated or more confused.
Yeah, it's a confusing issue, absolutely. Yes.
doesn't even look like we have a way to figure out if we solved the problem either, because we can't tell if the cases are going up because of the reporting from the electronic, or we just have numbers that are going up, and all of a sudden we're tasked with trying to decide whether we want to spend some money to figure out more information on it.
But, going back to the occupational issue, as an industrial hygienist, I can tell you that if you have an occupational safety professional in your team, as part of their respiratory protection, that they're supposed to be training and educating your workers, and that's per OSHA standards.
Well, I think we're on top of that.
Yeah.
But other factors, lifestyle factors of those infected that present, how many of them are smokers, for instance? And what impact does that have? How many have other life-threatening diseases such as diabetes or heart conditions? And where does that enter into the susceptibility of individuals?
That's correct. And
It would be a question if my physicians asked me the 150 questions they ask you now. Every time every periodically now you have to go, well, you're probably not old enough, but I do. Anyway, but if you've been a smoker or are a smoker, what impact does this disease have on? Does it manifest quicker? Is it more severe? Is it life-threatening? Doesn't matter?
Well, I haven't read any studies that look specifically to smoking as a variable. It's an interesting question.
Well, it houses itself in the lungs, right?
Correct. Unless it spreads outside of the lungs.
And I think the negative effects of smoking house themselves in the lungs, right?
Yes.
I don't know of any positive effects of smoking.
I'm just-
Maybe there are. I don't
I'm just saying I'm not aware of any studies that reveal a correlate that have looked at smokers and not, but yeah, it's a good question.
Interesting. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't know. More? No?
More questions lead to more questions. It makes you wonder how safe we can be.
Yeah, I have a question because, again, in community discussions, there's been different ideas or theories put out, and I wasn't sure. Is there when construction's done, is there a level of depth that potentially increases the risk? One of the things I've heard is that the spores tend to be 12 inches underground. And so if the wind's blowing surface dust, is that different than a construction that's going deep to that level?
Yeah, so the fungi lives, or it can be detected between 2 inches to 12 inches underground. So if you are grading a site, if you're excavating, if you're really agitating soil, the risk of exposure increases. So there are, different environmental engineering methods that can be applicable, but again, the issue is how good are they being applied, and how is it that your respiratory protection program is dealing with this, particular situation.
So that just made it worse. So that's now, to me, fugitive dust. If it's 2 inches on a windy day, there's fugitive dust.
Well, my suspicion is, that is a constant factor, notwithstanding any development whatsoever, whether it be agriculture or other type of soil disturbance, whatever that may be, including our county, outgrading the sides of the road.
Exactly.
Hey, that's, we all play a part, sounds like.
We had a case, this was an occupational case, in which 2 employees got infected by the disease. And the two employees were driving an excavator here, and didn't have any respiratory protection, nor in themselves, nor in the vehicle. So guess what? They were in the middle of the dust. Fungi was able to get into the cabin of the excavator, and they became infected. So again, your healthy and safe, your safety and health guy needs to be very knowledgeable about the type of controls and exposure assessment before they go into these working sites.
Our challenge really is to come up with proportionate standards to impose on future development, current development, and future development that are effective, but not so overburdening. And, it's the site and the development and the workers there, but you have the downwind folks as well that are out of our care and control. And that's beyond a challenge,
It is.
particularly when so much of the information that you're sharing, I mean, you can identify it, but it's not hard and fast. All right?
Yes.
It's kind of like our university thing, where one university had it and one university didn't have it. So everything is a maybe. These people maybe had it, or this may have been the cause of it. But it's pretty much for sure that this valley fever is caused by this fungus, and we just have to figure out the methodology of how that fungus gets into our lungs and causes us to have the symptoms. And that process right there is something we are not aware of perfectly well. We're got a somewhat idea of it, but we're not sure of the mechanisms yet.
Well, you were born here, so you're more likely to have had it, according to the experts, than I've only lived here 50 years.
Well, I'm one of the 60% that is immune.
Of course, you're not that old, so it doesn't matter, right? Well,
I have a friend that's 90 years old that's a backhoe operator. That's done it all his life. I mean, he's been in the dirt all his life. And if you saw him, you would think of him as still very healthy and vigorous. I mean, he's very strong. But, it's hard to tell. I mean, potentially on one side, that's why I asked about abatement. I mean, that could be development busting right there. And then still something that we're trying to figure out whether it's a problem or not. It is a problem because people are getting sick. But our reaction to the problem could make it worse. Because what if watering the desert actually makes the spores release? Because that's one of the first things they tell us to do is let's water it so we'll keep the dust down.
or if there is some application to the dust control methodology, to the water, some soil stabilization type of additive that may help or not. But that takes time and experiments and all the rest of it, right?
Correct. And that could add actually something else to the equation. Because we really, once you start adding additives and soil, what's the word I'm looking for? Remediation materials, you really wouldn't know what can that do to the environment or to your health also. So, the toxicology becomes really, really complicated.
We have a mayor that often says, show me the science. You skirted around it. We really don't have the science yet, do we?
It's going to take a while to get there, yes. But what we know, though, is that occupational exposures, they can be more controlled than your environmental exposures.
Right.
We really don't have an ability to control fungus like we do with bacteria. Antibiotics have been the wonder drug of the 20th century, and fungal infections don't have nearly as success rate in curing as antibiotics. So there's probably more research due to there too.
Yes, and keep in mind that some of these fungal species, they can remain dormant for a long period of time. And under the environmental conditions that in the future may come in, they can actually become active again.
Yeah, when the moon's in
So-
the right phase, the fungus suddenly comes out and is deadly and dangerous.
Yes.
It's a scary, scary thing. Could make a horror movie out of that.
Hopefully not.
Well, thank you all for your presentation today and the information. And I know you're in touch with Ms. Garibay, our staffer assigned to this wonderful project, to keep us updated and educated and making recommendations to us on appropriate mitigations. You're certainly welcome to stay. There's a number of people here who may want to offer comments on this subject after Ms. Garibay is finished. Or, you know, you're on the county's nickel, so I'm assuming you will make your own decisions whether you stay or leave. But we do appreciate very much the information you've provided, and you probably want to tell us about the brochures and material that's
Just
available.
so you know, you can go to our website, and there's a plethora of information there. All of it is, free, and including all of the numbers that I put up there are all available.
There you go.
All of the numbers that I gave you today, actually with the exception of the 2017 numbers, those aren't published yet, but all the 2016 numbers are reported, so if you want to go and look at those. And just to also mention that Los Angeles County works with a variety of groups, so we work both at the state level with the working group as well as the CDC looking at this issue. So thank you for inviting us and allowing us to be here.
Well, we very much appreciate the information you provided and the effort behind it. I mean, this is a serious issue, and we understand that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ms. Garibay?
Good evening. Good evening, Chairman Vos and Planning Commissioners. Delighted to be here tonight. As you know, the City Council directed staff to provide a recommendation for the Planning Commission to consider, which would address the concerns of valley fever here in Lancaster. Staff conducted a thorough analysis to learn about the fungus, which I actually just learned is cocci? I thought it was coqui, but coccidioidomycosis, or cocci, which causes valley fever. Conditions under which the cocci grows and spreads, and also the current impact in the city of Lancaster. The following facts were discovered through the literature and research available regarding valley fever, and I actually used a lot of the information that LA County provides. Coqui is endemic to the desert southwest, has an increased occurrence in arid to semi-arid regions with dust storms, hot summers, warm winters, and sandy alkaline soils. The Antelope Valley leads the county in the number of valley fever cases reported each year. In 2016, 211 cases were reported in the Antelope Valley. The likelihood of catching valley fever in the Antelope Valley is 9 times higher than other parts of the county. Most infections occur when soil containing the fungal spores are disturbed by either wind or human activities. Currently, no safe or effective vaccine or drug exists to prevent cocci. Prevention lies primarily in dust avoidance as well as dust control. The Antelope Valley has the greatest potential for land development in Los Angeles County and disturbance of land during the housing boom that peaked between, it was actually 2004 and 2005, was positively correlated with a spike in the incidence of coqui at that same time. Based on the research that I've indicated, it's clear that valley fever is definitely present in the city of Lancaster, which I'm definitely not surprised by that. The region's dry and windy conditions are a place where coqui can absolutely thrive, and it has. In addition to the research mentioned above, staff met with local experts, including a research professor from California State University, Bakersfield. I met with Dr. Anya Lauer, who is one of the leading researchers in valley fever. She's worked with Kern County Public Health, and she's done a lot of different studies related to valley fever to further understand the impacts of valley fever in the region. As part of that process, the professor indicated that the university could provide additional research that would further analyze and investigate the coqui fungi here in Lancaster. What she's proposing to do is basically creating an antagonist fungi that, when added to the soil before the land is disturbed, would basically eliminate the kochi fungi, and that's a study that she's proposing. The study would cost approximately $150,000 and would result in a 3-year study. And the commission was provided with a copy of that study for your review. This would be costly to the city. However, a nominal contribution towards this research could be paid by each developer as part of their required mitigation whenever an environmental document is required and or added as a condition of approval to their project. Staff determined that a contribution of $41 per acre would support the study and was derived based on the average number of acres that are disturbed per year. The average number of acres that are disturbed are 1,200. We divided that by $150,000, and that's how we came up with $41 per acre. Staff also previously reviewed approved development applications that attempted to address this issue and found that the mitigation measures included in the EIR developed for the Avanti South project adequately addressed the concern of valley fever, and we believe that these measures should be included for all projects proposing new development. Staff believes that there are 2 approaches to addressing valley fever. It's a twofold approach. Projects that require either a mitigated negative declaration or EIR would be subject to the proposed mitigation measures, along with the research contribution that I mentioned. For smaller projects that are exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act and are typically approved through an administrative review process, they would solely have to comply with the mitigation items, and those items would be added as a condition of approval through the approval process. The mitigation measures are as follows. The first mitigation measures are for projects that require an EIR or an MND. First off, dust mitigation. So prior to construction, the project applicant shall develop a fugitive dust control plan in compliance with AVA QMD Rule 43 to reduce PM10 and PM2.5 emissions. The fugitive dust control plan would describe all fugitive dust control measures to be implemented before, during, and after any dust generating activity as required by Rule 403. The project applicant would provide a copy of the fugitive dust control plan approved by AVA QMD to the city prior to the issuance of any grading permits. During clearing, grading, earth moving, or excavation operations, excessive fugitive dust emissions would be controlled by regular watering or other dust preventative measures using procedures as specified in AVA QMD's Rule 401 as well as Rule 403. The second component is a worker education and outreach, and that would include, prior to ground disturbance activities, the project operator shall provide evidence to the Development Services Director that the project operator and or construction manager has developed a valley fever training handout. Training and schedule sessions for education to be provided for all construction personnel. In addition to that, the project construction manager, would provide a sign-in sheet for all the employees who attended the training session. They would distribute a written flyer or brochure that includes educational information regarding the health effects of exposure to criteria, pollutant emissions, and valley fever. Training on methods that help prevent valley fever infection would be provided to the workers, as well as a demonstration to employees on how to use the protective personal equipment, so the N95 masks. The project operator would also consult with LA County Public Health to develop a valley fever dust management plan that addresses the potential presence of the kochi spore and mitigates for the potential of valley fever. Prior to issuance of permits, the project operator would submit the plan to LA County Public Health for review and approval. The plan would include a program to evaluate the potential for exposure to valley fever from construction activities and to identify appropriate safety procedures that would be implemented as needed to minimize personnel and public exposure to potential kochi spores. And some of the measures included in that plan would be the use of heavy equipment that's equipped with the factory enclosed cabs, the use of N95 protection masks, providing employees with clean eating areas with hand washing facilities, training workers to recognize the symptoms of valley fever. The operation manager or construction manager would work with a medical professional in consultation with LA County Public Health to develop an educational handout for on-site workers and surrounding residents within 3 miles of the project site, and include various information about valley fever on that pamphlet. Prior to construction permit issuance, the handout would be provided to the Development Services Director for their review, no less than 30 days prior to any work commencing. That handout would be mailed to all existing residences that are located within 3 miles of that project. The valley fever mitigation measures for projects that are exempt from CEQA, so these are the smaller projects.
Let me stop you right here.
Yes.
I'm going to back up and ask a couple of questions.
Sure.
Some of this looks mighty familiar to the standard LA County development conditions for solar projects. Is LA County Public Health structured in a position to review and approve in the first place? Does that mechanism exist in the county? Don't know. Okay. And if they do, what's the timeline?
That's something we can follow up with LA County Public Health to figure out not only what
I don't want to lose the question. And your calculation at 1,200 acres annually, wherever you got that number from, I don't think it's that number, but that's okay. At $150,000 is a different number than 41.
the $41 per acre.
Well, if it's 1,200 acres divided into 150,000, that's $125 per acre, not 41.
It's over 3 years.
Hmm?
It's over the 3 years. So it's actually, I'm sorry, I should clarify that. So the amount is $50,000 per year. Over the 3 years, it would be $150,000. So that's how we got to the 41. I should clarify on that.
50,000
It's
per year.
$50,000 per year. It's what they're proposing is a 3-year study.
No, okay, I got it. I read the study.
Oh, okay.
I struggled through it. Challenging, to say the least. So it's basically a director and 2 students.
Right. It's a research professor.
Yeah,
And,
a professor and 2 students in their vehicle running back and forth to Bakersfield. I got it. I mean, I read the study, and I know what they're talking about. It's pretty straightforward. 50,000 a year is what they want for it. That's $150,000. If we're going to impose a mitigation measure, we have to have a justification of an outcome. And what's the outcome?
Right. It's actually, we're not imposing it as we're not suggesting to impose it as a mitigation measure. We're asking for a contribution because a mitigation measure would require a council ordinance and approval.
No, I got that, but what's the outcome?
The outcome would be that we would create an antagonist that could basically eliminate the fungus before it becomes airborne, and that people inhale it and get sick, get valley fever.
So
That would be
that's
the
a
outcome.
modified gene?
I don't know if it's a modified gene. It's a she explained it as a fungi. It would be an antagonist fungi that could be created that would eliminate the fungi that's
So none of what she's going to be doing is going to be modifying genes to release into our environment. I read it over. It said that they're going to be released into the desert, and then that was supposed to antagonize the coccidioidiomycosis, whatever bug, coxybug.
Yeah, I'd be happy to invite Professor Anya Lauer to provide more detail. I think that would be that might
What
be
if
helpful.
it isn't the fungus that's causing belly fever?
Yeah, it's something we can look at.
Because, we're looking at fungus causing it. I mean, we have health effects. What if somebody is, like Chairman Bose pointed out, a smoker, and the 2 people in the excavator, as our thing, were heavy smokers, and they both came down with it, and we point out to it that it's the fungus. What if it's just their lifestyle that's causing them to be susceptible?
Right.
Wouldn't it be better if we treated it that way?
I think there's testing that could take place that would show whether or not they had valley fever. I think the
Also, we don't
smoking
even
and
know if
other
it's really
issues would be
increasing or
secondary.
not, do we?
I'm sorry?
We don't even know if valley fever is increasing or not.
Based on what LA County Health provided, it sounds like it's been increasing over the last 10 years.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure Alicia said that we're not 100% sure because of the electronic reporting.
There is definitely an increase of cases. I mean, we can see that because
Yeah, but cases is not an increase in the amount of pathogen. Cases just means we have better reporting, better surveillance, better monitoring, more reporting.
It may be. The pathogen itself or the fungus that lives in the ground, I can't speak if there's more or less of that, but we definitely have more disease within LA County,
Because more is being reported.
perhaps.
And we have a thing that tells us that it is, that ELR, the electronic. And
It's one hypothesis, yes.
so basically, we're being asked to, I'm sorry, Patty, we're being asked to spend $150 to $150,000 to find out if we can stop the fungal infection in the ground.
Right, and that's for consideration for the Planning Commission. That's an option, right? There are other
Be
things.
the outcome from that. I mean, would we expect to see less valley fever if that worked?
Yeah, I think that the goal would be that if it works, you can add that antifungal into the ground, and it basically eliminates kochi and eliminates valley
But wouldn't
fever
you want to
before it
do an
becomes
analysis? Let's just assume that 3 years from now, we have the results of the study and there is a methodology to treat the soil. All the soil. There's got to be a cost-benefit analysis done then, probably. I won't be around, but somebody else will be doing that, to make a determination of, we have X number of cases of valley fever, and there's a health cost impact, community impact, whatever that is, whatever council decides that is, compared to X number of dollars to treat, quote, soil that has a certain success rate. Because no treatment has a 100% success rate. We already know that. There's nothing in science that is 100% certain, right?
Maybe
Would you agree?
gravity.
Sure.
So, I mean, hate to put you on the spot, but, if you're going to get to step 7, you better know what step 7 is before you start step 1. That's why I'm asking, what's the outcome?
Yeah,
And
that-
if the outcome is that science will develop some sort of a soil treatment that will work at a certain percentage of success, whatever that standard is, shouldn't we establish that now? And that's our expectation, and if we don't reach it, we've spent the money and thank you very much and move on. Or if we exceeded,
Chairman
I mean,
Vos,
we're spending our money.
if I might make a recommendation or suggestion, Ms. Garabay did politely suggest to us that she would be willing to get the professor in to talk to us. Perhaps we need to hear this warrants hearing maybe from an expert. I mean, I think she's done a great job at trying to articulate as best as she can with the data that's been provided.
Well, no, I agree with that, and the conditions you're outlining are conditions we've imposed and continue to impose on development, right? I mean, these are not, they're relatively new. We've been imposing them for a while, right?
Right. As I understand it, they were imposed for the Avanti South project. So what we're asking is that they're imposed for any project that comes through.
I don't
for
disagree
planning
with that.
commission.
Matter of fact, last meeting, we suggested to our staff that that's in fact what they do, and it's my understanding that the city engineer and others are working up that process, whether it's developed under an EIR, a mitigated neg deck, or a application that comes across the counter. That'd be about right? Good. Go ahead.
Let's see. So I'm sorry. So I was at the Valley Fever mitigation measures, and this is for projects that are exempt from CEQA. What I was going to share is that the first mitigation effort is related to dust mitigation, and that basically mirrors what I presented for dust mitigation under the larger projects that require an MND as well as the EIR. So I won't review that again. The additional mitigation effort would be a worker education outreach component, and there's two different things that fall under that. The first would be a demonstration to employees as to how to use that personal protective equipment, the N95 masks, to protect themselves when they're in dust dusty conditions or working. And then the second thing would be to train workers to recognize symptoms of valley fever so that we can begin getting more information about valley fever, and workers are informing their supervisors when they feel as though, something is different and there may be a connection to valley fever, may not.
There's nothing in the write-up, or maybe I missed it, that talks about the requirement of the whomever, whatever you want to title the folks doing the work.
Workers? The
No,
supervisor?
the developer, call them, whatever you want to call them, of providing all of this gear, I'll call it gear, to the workers at no charge.
Right, there is it's not mandated. It definitely says that if the protective equipment is available, that they will educate their workers on how to use that equipment. But that is something
So if
to
we're
consider as well.
concerned that there is such a negative impact of this pathogen, why wouldn't we make it mandatory?
We absolutely can.
I mean, do we have enough bullets in the magazine to support that?
Yeah, I would believe so.
Good, thank you. Go ahead.
And then finally, the staff recommends that the Planning Commission consider the proposed approach to include conditions of approval related to valley fever for all new development applications. And I'm happy to hear any additional comments or feedback, ways that we can, tailor this to the Planning Commission's selection.
Very good, thank you, Pat. Anything else from anyone? We have speakers on this, it looks like.
David Paul.
Welcome, David.
Chair Vos and Commissioners, good afternoon. I missed last time because I had a competing NAACP meeting, and I got to run out here to go to that. But two things came up. Number one, I didn't hear anything about if you get valley fever and you survive, which it seems a lot of people do, how long does that take, and is there a range of that? And the other thing, I know from talking to people that if we do all this mitigation, you still have the problem of getting a diagnosis and anyone to do the blood test and the cost and all that stuff. It's very difficult to get that looked into. So that still exists. So that needs to be addressed simultaneously, is my thought. So thank you very much, and I'll sit down and listen to the answer.
Thank you. That's the only speaker?
That's the only speaker card.
Amazing. Well, once you're cured, how long does it take once you get it and you're cured? Nobody knows?
So I'm not quite sure I understand the question. So when
What, you're diagnosed, you suffer through the disease, and then you
and then
become
you're
immune.
treated. Okay, so it depends on the severity of the disease, and it depends on the comorbidity. So there's multiple factors. Just as if you and I both caught the same virus, how long would it take for each of us to get better? So it depends. Some people, the severity on this disease, they're on antifungals for the rest of their life. Sometimes they could be on them for a course of 3 months and be fine after that. So it's a wide range.
Sulfur drugs, lovely.
Well, again, it depends on the severity of the disease and the comorbidities of the person.
Is the test for it very expensive?
I can't speak to the cost of the test of the
Is it a rare
disease.
test? Is it easy to do?
It's a blood test. It would be the easiest. And then there's a confirmatory test that's often done in conjunction, which is also a second part of that blood test. So one will tell you if the disease is acute. One will tell if it was a disease that you had in the past. And then the other would be used if you were following a case patient that you knew had the disease and you were looking at the titer to see if it rises or drops based on the treatment that you're giving the patient.
So there's no rabbits that'll be killed or anything like that?
No rabbits must be killed, correct. and there's a skin test that it was used, but not recommended for detecting.
Like a TB test, that sort?
Yes, sort of. That's a good way to think of it. They used it in about 90,000 prisoners a couple of years ago because 2 of our state prisons are located in highly endemic areas.
That really hurts my feelings. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yes, so you need to know where you can place the prisoners or not, otherwise you're going to be looking at prisoners with severe disease. But within our community, in the community, a blood test is what's used.
All right, thank you. Anything else, anyone? All right. We're on information overload. Thank you very much. We're going to take a short break, and we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes. Thank you. So we're back in session. Just some housekeeping matters. We've received what have we received? We've received, besides our regular agenda that was posted and available on the internet, subsequent to that, we've received the memorandum that was just presented by Ms. Garibay. We've also had item 3, an additional condition added, item 5, an additional condition added, and item 7, staff report, had been revised, had been the sheriff's letter attachment provided, and conditions of approval have been revised as well. And we've also received uncontested letters, I believe, from somewhere in this pile of paper. On item 6, item 7 is contested, and item 8, no communication, and item 5, no communication. Item 4 is not applicable. And item 3, we received a uncontested letter. So, when we get to the contested piece, I'd like to hear about that first. Okay. All right. So next item is minutes of the meeting, our regular meeting of June 18, 2018. Motion to be in order.
Move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Thank you. Anything further? Please vote.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. All right. Next item is item 3. This is a continued public hearing that was opened at our last regular meeting, so the public hearing is still open. This is an applicant for a Coastal Business Group for a 65-foot tall wireless telecommunications facility. And I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the meeting, this commission meets twice a month, typically, usually the week before this meeting. We meet with staff in a public setting here in this space. We do not deliberate nor do we vote. We hear staff reports and ask individual questions, but we do not deliberate. Based on that, oftentimes when a item comes up and there's no public comments and no discussion, we may waive the public hearing and move right to a vote. So don't be surprised if that happens. All right. We've heard the presentation on this at our staff report. Do we have speakers on this item?
There are none.
Or not? All right. Anyone care to hear a staff report again? Nope. All right then. So without objection, we'll close the public hearing and consider a motion.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
Thank you. Anything further? Please vote.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. All right. Next item is item number 4. This is my item. Has to do with shopping carts, mine and the Assistant City Attorney. Where am I? Where to go? Okay. Before the City Attorney presents on this, I just wanted to give you a flavor of what impacts uncontrolled shopping carts may have in this community. And let's see if I can do this without making an error. Let's see what happens. Look at that. Those are abandoned shopping carts in our community between, let's see, what's the name of the center north of Lancaster Boulevard at Valley Central?
Marketplace?
Yeah. And those are different. There's Lowe's carts and there's some Albertsons carts there. It's kind of a ways away from those locations. The one on the right are Target carts. There's some more of them. That's about 3/4 of a mile north and west of the Target store. And there's some more. Those are what uncontained and uncontrolled carts are doing in our community. Let me back up. All right. Ms. Corbett.
Thank you, Chairman Vose. As you know, City Council recently directed staff and asked the Planning Commission to look into preparing an ordinance to address the retrieval and containment of shopping carts on store premises. As you've seen in the photos, shopping carts being taken off-site and used for personal purposes by people who don't have personal transportation, by homeless people and other uses, does proliferate and results in a pretty significant visual blight. There was the fire in the wash a few months ago, and there were a number of the plasticized shopping carts in there that created a real problem, a hazardous health issue. Removal of that, abatement of that is still underway, and I think still being considered how we're going to get rid of those melted shopping carts in that tunnel. So within the confines of what state law already proscribes, we've put together a draft of an ordinance. The State Business and Professions Code has very strict requirements for the processes of retrieving or impounding abandoned or other shopping carts taken off-site premises. A city is allowed to impound carts that they find off-site. Typically, they're supposed to give the store owner 72 hours notice to remove it, and if the store owner does not, then we can impound it and store it and charge the store owner our costs for recovery and impoundment. If it's an emergent situation, it obstructs and it causes a potential hazard, then we can remove it right away. Otherwise, we can remove and impound the cart right away, but we need to give notice, and we cannot recover our fees if we don't give them the 72 hours opportunity to remove it themselves. What the city has been doing up until this time has been contracting directly with a cart retrieval company in an effort to remove the visual blight right away. We have not made any efforts to try to recover any of our costs. We have our retrieval company simply pick up a cart and return it to the store location at no cost to the store owner. The city has been paying $3.50 a cart for that service. Starting July 1st of this year, it is now about $5 a cart. So the cost adds up pretty well. So the Business and Professions Code does prescribe what we can do in terms of abating and impounding ourselves, but it's pretty silent as to what we can request or require store owners to do to try to mitigate some of the removal of their carts. So in addition to sort of reiterating the state provisions in the ordinance, it also sets out a requirement that store owners put together a shopping cart retrieval and containment plan that they will file with the city. The city will review and approve, may make some changes and some revisions, so that a store owner will have to contract individually with a cart retrieval company and pay for their own retrieval, will have to implement and install some form of containment within their store premises, including parking lot, obviously. That can be an electronic method with the tracks or the rails, whatever you want to call it, inside the concrete. It could be store workers standing at the driveways and helping people unload the cart and then taking the cart back into the store. It can be put a quarter in the rack and pull out the cart and then get your quarter back when you're done. There are a number of methods that a store can use. We're going to require that all the carts have identification on them as set forth in the state code, so that they're easily identifiable if we do find carts abandoned off-site. We're also requiring some signage to be placed in prominent locations at the store premises to let people know, to let shoppers know that it is a crime to take a cart off-site, and that there are fines and fees associated with that. That's it pretty much in a nutshell. New stores moving forward would have, as a condition of approval, would have to provide the containment and retrieval plan upon application. Existing stores that are in business at the time the ordinance becomes effective, should it be adopted, would have a certain number of days. I think it's 30 days to get a contract with a retrieval company. I think it's 60 or 90 days to submit the whole plan and to get approval. Some stores already have containment methods, allegedly, at their site. Some are more effective than others. We'll want to see what they currently have in place, and it is possible, and I suspect in some instances likely, that the city would want to have some additional supplemental containment methods for some of those locations where we're seeing a lot of carts out and about, and yet they apparently have containment systems. So that's about it, unless you have any questions.
Thank you. This commission has imposed a containment condition on shopping center development for some time in the community. However, there are developments in the community that have not had those conditions imposed upon them because they were developed prior to that standard condition being imposed, as well as properties that have been repurposed, buildings that may have been repurposed for a use where shopping carts are now being used. When I took, and I shared this with my colleagues earlier, I spent some time just personally going to, frankly, every center in the city. And just to give you an idea of the impacts, Ms. Corbett glossed over the cost a bit. We're talking about 5,000 to 6,000 carts being retrieved at city expense annually. At $5 a piece, that's a whole lot of money. that frankly, as far as I'm concerned, is not money the city ought to be spending. That the merchant who is allowing carts to be misused should be responsible for that. For instance, and this is in no particular order, some of these folks have the wheel stop devices, the electronic containment device, where there's a track embedded in the asphalt and concrete around the shopping center parking lot, around the entire building actually, and there's wheel locks. We've all experienced them where we're pushing our cart out to wherever, and then all of a sudden it stops. Well, that's why it stops. But places like Big Lots doesn't have wheel stops, but so far the first 3 months of this year, the city's retrieved 132 of those. Add $5 and multiply that by $5. Home Depot doesn't have them. Now, Home Depot's been there prior to the imposition of that condition, or maybe it was overlooked. I don't know, but we need to do the research on it, I think, because if those conditions were imposed and never implemented, then I think we have the leverage to implement them. Lowe's is interesting. That's a new development. However, they do not have wheel stops. Maybe we missed it in that application and approval. I don't know. But the first 3 months of this year, 212 have been recovered by the city. It's interesting how it happens. The grocery store next door to Lowe's has wheel stops. So what I observed were folks taking their shopping cart from their grocery store and taking it over to Lowe's, transferring their products out of their grocery store cart into Lowe's, so then they could go off-site to take their groceries home or wherever they live nearby, or not necessarily nearby, some distance away. Now, you know, you can't blame people who don't have transportation, certainly, for transporting their small children and their food. If if you're a mom with small children and you live nearby but no transportation, you certainly can't blame people for seeking an alternative method to transport their goods. However, what does happen is those carts are left wherever they are, in the street, in the sidewalk, wherever, dumped in a field, stuck underneath flood control systems here, creating a hazard. So that's just one example. Superior Grocery is a high incidence. They have wheel stops. They have a system in place, but there's still a substantial number off-site, as well as Vallarta on the east side. They are one of the largest, and the Walmarts on both east and west. However, the east side is a higher proliferation, and they both have the systems in place. They both have the wheel stop systems that are operational. So I don't know how in the heck people are getting these carts off site, but they're sure doing it. For instance, Vallarta this first quarter was 300. Walmart on the west side was 243, and on the east side was 277. So the first quarter of this year was over 1,300 carts that the city paid for to have them retrieved. Anyway, so I, for one, think that we should come up with either an approval of this or a modification of it. I'm concerned, Ms. Corbett, that do we have the police power to recommend to the city council to adopt this, or does the city council have the police power to impose it?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes and yes, yes.
Okay.
It has been successful in other cities who used to be clients of mine. It's been very successful in some of those cities.
So at the risk of doing public math, I think we're trending on somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 if we continue at this point with 1 July upward to $5 per cart. I want to get out of the business of retrieving shopping carts. And I don't think that this fair city should be paying the fee. I think it needs to go to the merchants, and I need to know what's our next step forward. We need to make that happen.
Interesting, when I visited some of the shopping centers, talked to some of the managers in the grocery stores and such. A couple of weeks later, one of the chains who had retrieval systems in place all of a sudden had new retrieval systems in their other store. So, and should have, and those folks are paying to have their own carts retrieved. It's, at $5 a piece, it gets really expensive. Now, will people still tend to do that? I think so. I mean, people will figure out a way how to trick the system. I'm not sure how you do that, but somebody will figure it out.
I think the combination of the store having to pay for its own cart retrieval is going to be good incentive and motivation for them to really get a good solid containment system, keep it maintained, keep an eye on it, have people go out in the parking lot periodically and see how people are cheating the system and try to figure ways around that. It will be incumbent on them, and they will, I believe, be very, very motivated to figure out how to stop people from being able to cheat the system when you're talking about $4 or $5 a cart. It's not nothing.
Well, carts are expensive too. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was going to say, I think this makes a lot of sense. I mean, of course, if we're paying for it, why would they invest in improving the system? If my neighbor's mowing my lawn, I'm going to cancel my gardener. But have we reached out to the business community to work with them in terms of developing this as a solution, or make sure that it gives them enough flexibility to help be partners in solving the problem?
I do not believe that staff has had any formal meetings with stakeholders. It's always a good idea to consider doing that. I don't know if it's appropriate in this circumstance. That's a policy decision. That's not something in my purview. It sounds like Chairman Vose himself is getting the word out fairly well, apparently. So there may already be some talk in the community, in the retail community about it. But outreach is always a good idea. If you get people on board in advance, let them know what's coming.
Well, and not just what's coming, but also having some input. I like in the drafting process. Just to make sure there's nothing in there that would be too negative of an effect that we just don't know about because it's the way they do their business. Now, I know in Jim's, with the chairman, he's very familiar with that and many other businesses, but I still like to have some sort of process on something like this that includes them in the drafting the policy.
The commission certainly can direct staff here to put something together. You could, if you wanted to, you could put together a subcommittee and invite some retailers. There are a number of ways you can handle that. So you just need to come to consensus and direct staff with how you'd like to proceed in that regard.
Well, there's my unscientific study and report I shared with staff. There's a half a dozen, 7, 8, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 folks that do not have a containment system of some kind. Of that, for instance, I would have thought Costco would have been, the worst offender. I mean, they don't have wheel stops. They got giant carts. One retrieved. That mean they're paying somebody to go out and retrieve them, or the clientele that shops at Costco doesn't go off site with a cart? I mean, who knows?
I don't know how you know that.
I don't know how you measure that.
Yeah.
But I suspect that the 2 Vallartas, the biggest offenders who have the system in place either don't have an effective system or there's a way it's being tricked that needs to be resolved. And I don't know what that resolution could be. But there's, 6, 7 grocery store locations, the Vons and the Albertsons do not have a system in place. But we have no recovery numbers on those, although their carts are all over the town. So
I don't have an explanation for
I
that.
don't know either, so.
You know, just to throw out there, quite frankly, a conversation with some of the store owners and maybe some of the manufacturers about how you get around people beating the system might not be the worst idea, aside from getting stakeholder input into the ordinance itself.
But
Because
there's
there's
not-
got to be a resolution to that, I would think.
There's probably a half a dozen, maybe 8 retailers that are the highest incidence of problem that, certainly could invite, the managers or whomever their marketing people are that could, sit down and talk about it and do that between now and the next meeting and get their input, and then we can take this up as an action item.
Yes, I'm curious to know how the retailers don't know how they're gaming the system. And I'm asking that question because you can't go 5 feet outside of a store without being on closed caption. There's cameras everywhere. So if I'm a merchant, I would have looked at that by now and put some sort of robust process in place. Not understanding it. So I think we need to meet with the merchants,
Yeah.
some of the big offenders.
Yeah.
Certainly, we can do that. And as Commissioner Mercy said, we're retrieving and bringing them back for them, so they can look at the camera all day long, but why do they care? They don't have to worry about it. We're going to get it for them.
And I want to be careful about calling them offenders. I mean, the person breaking the rule is the person stealing the cart.
Yeah.
The store is getting the cart delivered back to them. They may not realize, especially if they're not the manager who set the policy in place just to let it go.
I would think if I'm missing 272 carts in 1 month time frame, that as a store owner, that I would know that I'm missing that many
But
carts.
if they're getting them back within 3 days,
Are we getting them back that fast?
I don't know what the turnaround time is with our retrieval company, quite frankly. I know that they are supposed to respond within, I believe, 48 hours of getting a call. They don't have to wait the 72 hours because we're not trying to recover any costs from the store owner. So as soon as they are informed about the location of an abandoned cart, they're supposed to go pick it up and take it back to the store right away. I don't know what the real
So then I
turnaround-
will change my language and say allegedly.
Yeah.
That helps.
I think, again, those most familiar with the industry may have some other knowledge that we don't that could help make this even stronger. So I like the idea of going back and doing some outreach there.
Another anecdotal comment, though. You'll notice that the preponderance of the photographs are red carts. And if you look at the report, the city has not paid for any red cart retrieval. I'm not going to say Target, I'll say red carts. Okay? Figure that one out. So does that mean then that that company is retrieving their own carts from the same vendor the city has hired? Because that vendor has to be, licensed in the state to be able to do cart retrieval? So they've got a lock on the business, so to speak? So if that vendor is retrieving carts and has a contract with the merchant, he's collecting from the merchant. And if he doesn't have a contract with the merchant, he's collecting from the city. Maybe that's what's going on.
Theoretically, that is how it's supposed to work.
So maybe we can put something into this proposed ordinance that says the city isn't paying for anything. And our costs, our actual costs will be recovered. I don't know what the language would be, but that would be the intent.
And that's by incorporating the state language that allows for recovery of costs when the city does abate, that's built in. So that's always going to be an option. There's always going to be a few carts out there. It's never going to go away entirely. That's
Right.
just not possible. But city now will have the ability, based on the code, to do the abatement, do the impoundment, and actually recover our actual costs. And that's what the fee would be. It would be what our actual costs are for driving out to the location, taking it back to wherever we're going to store it, storing it, etc. Absolutely.
And that's how the ordinance is written now?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's interesting. I drove by a retailer on the way over here, and adjacent to their parking lot in the neighboring property was this pile of carts, some of which belonged to that merchant. And they've been there for weeks in that same pile. And I'm thinking, well, gee whiz. They go out and retrieve the carts and, bring them up to the front door so the customer can use them, but they haven't bothered to pick up the carts that are right next door to them.
Because they're waiting on the city of Lancaster to do that.
Maybe. I don't know. There's got to be a way to deal with it. And it's not just the homeless. That's a portion, certainly.
Well, now that the weather's gotten nicer, I've started jogging outside more, and I see them around the bus stops. Because again, it's someone who's taking it to get them home, and if they're not walking distance from home, they're taking them on the bus. So, yeah, and that I think creates some safety issues because they're blocking sidewalks, especially for those who might need those for wheelchair or other mobility issues. Those sidewalks.
Right. On 40th and L, for instance.
And I noticed that there's 3 stops along 10th Street West between K and J, and one morning there were 1 or 2 carts at each stop.
Yeah, very typical. Very typical. But you can't really blame the folks that are doing that because they have no other transportation. And what are they going to do? As soon as the bus comes, they're going to get on and they're going to jump off and take the cart back? No. I mean, as much as we'd like to have people do that, they're not going to do it. So we have enough direction.
I think we understand where you'd like us to be when we bring it back in August. Yes.
Great, thank you.
We're going to skip the subcommittee.
Well, any 3 that want to show up when Ms. De La Cruz and her staff sort out who's coming and when it is and where it is, any 3 can show up. You'll let us know, right?
Sure.
Thank
See
you.
who responds.
And that'll include some outreach to the retailers. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty clear who they would be, I think. Okay. All right, we have new public hearings. First item is number 5, a conditional use permit number 17-21, so without objection, the public hearing is open on this matter. We did not receive a letter one way or the other on this. You need this back? You have speaker cards on this item?
There are no speaker cards on this item. However, the applicant is here tonight and would like to address the commission.
Okay, so let's have a staff report then. This is Ms. Magana.
Ms. Magana is controlling the PowerPoint for me.
Oh, I see.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay, so the applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to allow for the operation of a brewery and tasting room with 6 types of ABC licenses. The brewery and tasting room requires the applicant to obtain a Type 1 and 42 license. The additional license types allow for the manufacturing of beer, sale of beer for resale, incidental sales to other supplier type licenses, and direct shipping and catering. The project is located at, next slide, please. The project is located at 44950 Valley Central Way within the Lancaster Marketplace. The multi-tenant shopping center includes a variety of tenants such as nail and beauty salons, retail stores, and medical offices. There are currently 3 active ABC licenses within the shopping center. The applicant, She Beverage, will occupy a 10,000 square foot tenant space within the shopping center, and the brewery would be limited to 2,500 square feet and would manufacture, distribute, and sell craft beer on site. The tasting room would utilize the majority of the tenant space as shown on the site plan, on the floor plan. The applicant is also requesting live entertainment to be included, such as live music, DJ, movie nights, comedy acts, and plays. Just to provide some history of the operations of this business, in January of 2016 and June of 2017, the business was given permission to operate a temporary banquet facility within the suite for various private events. They were allowed 7 events in 2006 and another 7 in 2017 prior to submitting their conditional use permit application. However, staff was made aware that additional events were held without the city's knowledge and raised concerns for the city's public safety department, as you were able to hear from Mr. Lee DeRico at last Monday's meeting, and thereby resulting in conditions of approval that would limit the hours of operation for the proposed business. The special events would be limited from 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week per the City of Lancaster's Public Safety Department, which is more stringent than what the LA County Sheriff's Department has imposed for the business. In addition, each event would serve food and drinks. The proposed hours of operation would be from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week, but the proposed hours of operation for alcohol sales would be limited to 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And the applicant has indicated that they would like the commission to consider a modification to these hours. The project is consistent with the goals and actions of the general plan and is also compliant with the Lancaster Municipal Code requirements, as well as meeting the separation distance requirements as identified by the city's alcohol ordinance. And staff is able to make the findings to grant a conditional use permit and would recommend that the Planning Commission take action as shown on your staff report. And again, the applicant would like to address the commission this evening. Thank you.
All right, any questions of staff before we hear the applicant? Nope. Who's going to talk to us?
Good afternoon, Chairman Vos and Commissioners. My name is Lupe Rose, CEO of She Beverage Company. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to be heard today on the calendar for our CUP.
Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you. I wanted to address the Commission Board to let you know how passionate I am about this city. About 22 years ago, I moved to Lancaster because I learned about growth opportunities, new developments, the housing market, as well as what the community had to offer. I took the drive up from Culver City, spent the weekend here with my family, drove around, and immediately fell in love. Certainly it was a beautiful spring day before I was introduced to the desert heat. I knew then that this is where I wanted to be. I took the leap to move to Lancaster. I worked for local companies like Jacor Communications with Larry Thornhill and Henry Schindel, those of you who know them. I also worked for High Desert Broadcasting and ended my radio career and broadcasting career with Edelman. Over those years, I was deeply rooted in the community by celebrating and participating in events such as our Amazing Poppy Festival, our AV Fair, most concerts and city functions, and was passionate about Thunder on the Lot with Ron E. Mart and Grace Resource Center. In fact, I've not only donated my time and money to those charities, but also took the time on several Thanksgiving holidays and personally cooked Thanksgiving dinners to assist Steve with feeding the community that he assisted over at Grace. I've taken my nephews and son to Jethawk Stadium to watch a game, and I wanted to be in this great community and city every opportunity I had. Professionally, while I worked at the local radio station, in addition, I also owned an entertainment business where my career focus was assisting Fortune 500 companies with their growth by creating ideas to launch and to assist them with sustaining their companies and brands. In fact, I've created menu items for McDonald's that are still on their menu today, as well as clothing lines with Versace, and introduced technology to third world countries and have been proud of my resume. Today I'm coming to the city because I have been fortunate enough to create a brand called She Beverage Company. I'm living the American dream, and I have introduced our brand nationwide. She Beverage Company is a local-owned company created by Sonia Shelby and myself, who my partners are here. And we partnered up with Kat Dearden as well. Sonia's resume comes with boasting an impeccable career in the medical field, working most of her career for UCLA and Cedars-Sinai, and had worked in management at Lancaster Community Hospital. And most recently, prior to assisting me with the launch of She Beverage Company, was the president of a local college. Sonia has one son who is our general manager at She Beverage Company. Kat Dearden left a 22-year career in nursing with our local Kaiser and owns two businesses here locally, Gisco Green Construction Company and Sweet Cheeks 3D Ultrasound Studio. Kat has 3 children. Her husband is a peace officer at the prison. Her son is a CHP officer with the city of Torrance. Her other son is pursuing a career at the NFL, and her daughter runs her day-to-day operations at the ultrasound studio. My partners and I have established our company in Lancaster and want nothing more than to grow here. What you see us applying for today is for a tasting room and brewery for our local community. But what you may not know about She Beverage Company is that we are the first female-owned beverage conglomerate in the world. She Beverage Company has not only craft beer, which we currently manufacture in San Jose, a smart water named Sip by She, which we currently manufacture in the City of Commerce, a supplement water called Supplement H2O, where we currently manufacture in San Diego, and a host of other beverages where we manufacture U.S.-wide. She Beverage Company distributes to Walmart, Vons, Albertsons, the Dodger Stadium, the Staples Center, BevMo, Total Wine and More, gas stations, and locally convenient stores. Our company is certified woman-owned, and I have the pleasure of speaking to young ladies around the world about entrepreneurship. In fact, She Beverage Company has a strategic partnership with the LA Sparks Women's Basketball Organization, and we're providing young ladies there with scholarships during their basketball seasons, where we are presented and sponsored by She Beverage Company. What you also do not know is that She Beverage Company is in our final stages of completing our audit for our S-1 filing, and we are set to launch our IPO in the months to come. We are currently finishing our round with our pre-IPO, and She Beverage Company during this IPO will be raising $100 million for the further growth of our company, where our ultimate goal is to bring our manufacturing sites to Lancaster and offer further growth to our community along with thousands of jobs. So in closing, I want you to know the people behind the business who pride themselves with an amazing work ethic and community involvement. In addition, I also want you to see the big picture and the future of She Beverage Company and know who she is. In our perfect world, we would like to see our operations, our hours of operation to end at midnight. And please know that we have licensed security enough to accommodate our capacity, and will be selective with our entertainment to not only welcome and attract a more sophisticated crowd, and perhaps the safety board or those in charge can reconsider our hours of operation to closing at midnight, or even on a probationary basis, or even on the weekends if possible. Thank you for your time.
We may have some questions for you since you
Yes, sir.
shared with us. And thank you for your comments. So you agree with all the conditions of the conditional use permit except the hours of operation,
Yes, sir.
the entertainment hours, special events, live entertainment, right?
Yes, special events and live entertainment. We have...
And the reason for the limited hours from 8 to 10 recommended to us, in your opinion, are?
Well, I think that some time ago we were subletting the building, and we made the mistake to sublet to our subletter. And
You don't need to go into all the
well, we had
gory
some problem. We had some problems there where there were some not too attractive people that were coming by, and they were running some quinceañeras and letting out at 2 o'clock in the morning, and
sheriff's calls.
and the sheriffs were called out. And then we had some false accusations because we basically, after we learned about some of the things that the sublettee were doing, we actually canceled our agreement with her. And so then she started attacking us and calling and making false statements to the sheriff's department, along with the health and food board, which we don't even run a kitchen, but she had them come out and they noted it as falsified complaint. So there are things that she was doing in the community to try to hurt us and damage our reputation because of because we canceled the contract with her after learning about the problems that she was having. But I do want you to know that if we're given the opportunity to establish ourselves under our business, that like I said, even on a probationary basis, give us an opportunity to show you who we are and our work ethic and the people we attract, that I don't think you'll have any problems moving forward.
Will you be subletting in the future?
Not at all.
Anyone else? Question? Anyone?
What are the alcohol sales hours at the two other breweries in Lancaster?
I'm sorry, I don't have that information available tonight.
I'm just wondering if the hours match up, if everyone's getting the same.
Well, this is entertainment, I think. Special events and live entertainment is the limiting factor. Alcohol sales 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. So
Right, but that was what they were asking for the adjustment on.
Right, and it's the same type of entertainment that they provide now with just local bands coming out to play, food trucks outside for families and things of that nature. And I think the other breweries close at midnight or thereafter.
Well, there's two other two other operations in that center that provide entertainment. One is a nightclub, and as I think we determined from Director Diarico, there were no calls for service at either one of those. However, in past history on this, there were calls for service, so that's why the limiting conditions early on with a review in 6 months, the way the conditions are written. So are you saying that you haven't said this, but I'm asking you, your business can't be successful on an 8 to 10?
Well, I think it's very limited. It's not that it cannot be.
Definitely it's limited, and there's a reason for it. Which
and I understand, and I think our level of success doesn't come by the local brewery. We're providing the local entity so that we can provide some great events here locally for our community. Entertainment is my background prior to launching the business. Of course, our capacity is way and above here being local as we're building a national brand. But we have so many interests in our brand here by the local community and by women who support our brand. And I just think that if given the opportunity to prove ourselves under our company and our established name instead of the subletter or the problems that have happened in the past, then we'd have an opportunity to prove who we are under our own business.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Mercy, I did a quick Yelp. And for Bravery, their hours Monday through Wednesday are 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. Thursday through Saturday, they vary from noon to 11 p.m. and on Sunday from noon to 9. And Kinetic, the latest that they were open is midnight on Friday and Saturday. And this is just according to Yelp.
Is there food service in this project? Is there an active kitchen in this operation?
Not at this time. We'd like to invite, we have relationships with the food trucks that we've already spoke to our management about bringing those trucks up on the weekend. And I think our main concern is not necessarily the weekdays, but the weekends, such as Bravery and or Kinetic, if we could stay open later on Friday and Saturday.
And Kinetic has a full-service kitchen in operation, and that's their requirement as well. It's the first I've heard about food trucks, so did staff consider that in the application?
That wasn't identified as part of the application. Specifically, they did indicate that various events would be catered.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you. Anything else from anyone? No? All right, thanks very much for your comments. Anyone else on this item? Anyone else on this item?
There's no other speakers.
Okay, Thank you. So without objection, we'll close the public hearing and consider a motion.
I'd like to move staff's recommendation and make the change on the hours on Friday and Saturday. So this motion would include that change till
Second.
midnight.
I second.
Thank you. So the motion is the recommendation of staff modifying the hours of operation condition number 5 to be 8 p.m. to midnight on Friday and Saturday only, and the other 5 days, 8 to 10.
Well, clarify, does that apply to item 4 and 5, or just 5 in terms of the alcohol sales, or just the entertainment hours?
Trying to find out. Item 4 and 5, you want them, both of them to be to four is alcohol sales, 5 is special events and live entertainment.
If we do the alcohol sales, then that would cover the special events too, wouldn't it?
Well, yes. If you want them both to be midnight on Friday and Saturday, then it would be item 4 and 5. That would be my suggestion. That way it's consistent licensing-wise and operational oversight-wise.
That sounds like my motion.
Okay. All righty. And this application then would be reevaluated in 6 months, and we'd get it back. We can take a look at it and may make further modifications or just leave it the way it is, or who knows what.
That's correct.
Right? All right. Do we understand the motion, everyone?
Yes.
All right. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. Very good. Good luck with your business. We'll see you back here in 6 months. Don't screw up. As a technical term, right? Not very professional to say it that way, but I think we all understand. All right, next item is item number 6. This is a new public hearing on conditional use permit 17-33. So without objection, the public hearing is open. Do we have speakers on this item?
No speakers on this item.
No speakers. All right. We've heard the staff report previously on this item. I believe I have some questions on it. I did. Hold on.
I had some questions too on the.
All right. Very good. Let's have a brief staff report then, please.
Good evening, Chairman Vose and members of the Planning Commission. The item before you is conditional use permit number 1733 to allow for the operation and construction of a medical cannabis cultivation and manufacturing facility that consists of two 24,900 square foot buildings located on Avenue G, approximately 350 feet east of 40th Street West, and adopting a mitigated negative declaration. The property is located within the Foxfield Specific Plan Manufacturing Distribution Zone and has a general plan land use designation of light industrial. The property is currently vacant. The proposed project includes the construction of 2 new buildings and would include installation of a paved and landscaped parking lot. The entire development would be fenced with a controlled entrance off of Avenue G. The proposed project complies with the Foxfield Specific Plan Manufacturing Distribution Land Use Designation because it is compatible with adjacent land uses and development. The Foxfield Airport Complex, with a mix of industrial and commercial type uses along with the runway, is located approximately a half a mile to the northeast. The Apollo Community Regional Park is located a half a mile directly north of the project site. Additionally, the proposed project complies with the Foxfield Specific Plan Design Guidelines. The design of the proposed medical cannabis cultivation and manufacturing facility implements a high-quality industrial development. Both buildings would include the installation of architectural elements such as vine-look patterns and gold architectural accent pieces. This would establish a uniform design and materials throughout the development. And as you can see here, the elevations are on the PowerPoint. The proposed project also provides landscaping throughout the entire site. The interior and rear property lines are lined with trees with a 10-foot landscape buffer from the property lines per the Foxfield specific plan design guidelines. The facility would use a negative pressure environment and carbon filter system for odor filtration to remove unwanted smells. The applicant would establish a waste disposal system by utilizing a company for cannabis waste management solutions. All green waste would be stored within the building. The proposed facility would have security lighting, camera, 24-hour patrol officer, and real-time monitored camera system. A detailed security plan was submitted to the city's public safety office and deemed adequate for the proposed use. The surrounding properties are located within the Foxfield specific plan manufacturing distribution zone. The hours of operations are similar to the adjacent industrial uses and would be limited to Monday through Friday from 9 to 5 for shipments and deliveries. The facility would serve a community need and would not affect adjacent properties, uses, or residents. In conclusion, staff is recommending approval of CUP 1733 and adopt a negative declaration.
Thank you. And you said, we said there's no speakers on this? Okay.
There's no speakers.
Thank you.
I'd also like to add that the applicant is here for any questions.
All right, thank you.
My question I asked in an email was why we didn't condition more solar panels on the project, because the one elevation that was sent to us showed hundreds of tons of air handlers on top of the building, hundreds of tons of air handling capability, which to me, right now, my little 5-ton unit's costing a small fortune at my house to run. So I was wondering, I know we conditioned them to use Lancaster Choice Energy, and we don't have the ability, or they don't have solar panels. So since we have such a glut of solar energy, why don't we start conditioning them to put in the storage? Also, couldn't some of these facilities also be test beds for some of our real green ideas too? I mean, they're going to be making a considerable amount of money off of us, and it seems like we're stretching an awful lot of things that our city's supposed to be doing to accommodate it. I was wondering if maybe we could ask them to be build the storage batteries for the electricity to help even out our grid, to help us with our gray water recycling and things like that, and let it be a project. It's just something I wanted to throw out for discussion.
Yeah, and it's my understanding that Smart Choice, which is the city's, energy provider, is all renewable, and so any. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the Smart Choice option.
The Smart Choice option is all renewable, and anything above and beyond would not be something that we could impose on the project. There wouldn't be any real nexus since we're already requiring them to go through the city's option.
So we couldn't require them to put solar panels on because we don't have a solar requirement for industrial buildings yet.
That's correct.
Could we ask them?
Absolutely.
And then also, too, my point wasn't so much on generation as we have so much generation of solar now in the state of California that we actually give it away to the state of Arizona, who actually takes it for free. And our problem is we're unable to store the excess. That's why we give it away. If there was some way to store it, and I've noticed some of our solar panels out there have been putting in battery packs. Maybe instead of conditioning solar panels for challenging places, we could condition storage batteries. It just, creative solutions and these types of things help even out the grid in the future. Because more and more solar is defeating the purpose. We need to actually store what we're making now.
I think Lancaster Choice Energy's production of green energy is wind, right?
Actually, the renewables through LCE are a combination. There is a lot of solar, wind. There is a lot of solar as well. And I know that there's something new. I can't remember what it is that I've heard Ms. DeFalco mention that they're looking into. So it's really the whole panoply of the renewable sources.
And they do buy that from all over the country. That wind could be generated electricity in Colorado, or the electricity could be
North Dakota even.
North Dakota even.
I think, yeah, it's trading credits, essentially, swapping shares. It's so beyond my purview, but yes, that,
Well, see, like I just recently read a story that talked about mitigating a ton of CO2, which is the reason why we're going through all of this electrical energy thing is, and you could mitigate it for less than $30 a ton, but when you put the solar panels on your roof, it costs somewhere in the neighborhood of $800 a ton to mitigate that. So the solar panel generation is, we've done that. The next step is to try to store it. The original plan for California electricity generation was nuclear power and using reservoirs to store the electricity. So when the power plant didn't need to put out all the juice, it could pour it into storage, and then we could use it as we needed it. And that's why the grid is becoming more, I know that the ISO's doing a good job in maintaining it, but maybe from our standpoint, instead of looking at things like generation, we might look at storage. I'm done.
Can you get the site plan you can put up? So does that site plan show the property line? So that site plan indicates that the building is 20 feet from the PL all the way around, more or less? About right? Can't tell from what's been provided to us here. I'm sorry, it's 40 feet or all the way around it. So it's two freestanding buildings with circular driveway all the way around them, with limited parking in front, with one curb cut, and no off-site improvements other than an encroachment permit to build a driveway, right? You about right?
That's correct.
Well, if you're going to put panels on the roof, you're going to have to redesign the building, roof structure.
I just know Lancaster has an image as a green city. It just seems like if we're growing green, then we ought to have them green also.
What's that? 60,000 square feet of roof will produce about a thimbleful of power based on the need of the use. That's my thought. Maybe the applicant can share with us their power need.
More like a pinprick amount of power, but
I have a small thimble.
we're actually trying to improve, so every little drop counts.
Well, we can ask them, whomever it is we would ask. Since the application before us only has a corporate name, we don't know who the officers are. Here's an officer.
Good evening, Chairman. My name is Ken Versosa, and I'm with CEI in Palmdale. We are the project engineers for this project. Behind me is Brian McMillan, who is the CEO of Superior Vitality.
Good afternoon. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To address the question as regarding for solar power, Mr. Chairman, you had it pretty dead on. The square footage of the roof minus the equipment area that we have to apply would not be able to, the leftover area would not be able to generate enough power to make a sizable dent in the power that's going to be needed. Our early expectations is the two buildings, if we're constructed, will be in the neighborhood of 6,000 amps needed for both buildings at 480 volt.
Each?
Be roughly 3,000 per each building. The manufacturing or the cultivation part of the building is the largest user of the electricity that's going to be needed, since the operation is a 24/7 operation. And that includes the grow lights, as a cycle, and also the watering system and filtration system. As part of our condition, we have to maintain the air quality outside of the building as it is, and of course, any air being exhausted out of the building has to be filtered and scrubbed to meet that same outdoor quality. So those systems are continuously operational to meet that requirement. The majority of the space for these two buildings, I believe, is that we are 17,000 square feet of cultivation per each building, and such that as the growing goes, that it will be the major operation of the facility. We can look into the solar component. We can also look into the battery component, which would probably be more useful for us since the operation is a 24/7. Taking advantage of Edison's generation schedule, it would probably be easier for us to recapture some of the energy being not used at nighttime and to be used during the day. And we are working with Edison to find a solution for the power deficiency in the area. I don't know if you have gotten any comments from that, but there seems to be a circuit shortage to provide power into the area.
Isn't that interesting? You have a Foxfield plan with all sorts of existing and future projects, and there's not enough juice to serve it.
It was quite surprising when we were informed from Edison themselves as towards
I hope that was early on, not at this stage of your
it was, we had already submitted our application, and it was during the process of going through conditions and everything that we were told by Edison of an issue that they are currently working on, and hopefully will have a solution within a year or two.
So if we approve a conditional use permit which has a shelf life, are you going to be back before us asking us for an extension? Since it's going to be a couple of years before you get power?
We are looking at alternative means of power generation, not just as a solar or wind. We are looking at new technologies for fuel generation cells, possibility of other means of generating power. Our original plan in phase one is just to construct one building at the moment, and such that we will certainly look into, when we get to the actual construction of the cultivation facility, that where we can try to be able to consume less power and work within Edison's timetable of them allowing us to get some power to the building.
So 300 amp three-phase power, because you're building a building that will have a life potentially longer than the project you're contemplating.
That is correct.
Well, it sounds like you are going to do exactly what I suggested anyway, on your own, and it would be nice if the city would actually partner with you a little bit, so when we do these studies in the future, that we could benefit from what you're going to do.
It would be a pleasure, and certainly we can provide our information and what we have to design for with staff. And
so you look at hydrogen fuel cells or something like that, or?
There are so many different options. Hydrogen obviously is one. It's a matter of how efficient the power is generated. If that's the means we go by, then obviously the fuel cells that be used will have to work in conjunction with batteries, for the most sake that the storage of power is probably going to be more prevalent than trying to generate the power.
But you're stored at off-peak hours when the
correct
kilowatts are a little cheaper.
Right, yes. The method of having the power used at the stored power used when the heaviest loads are being taxed on Edison's system, and then recouping, obviously, a cycle where we can recoup power back into the system, and then obviously, if possible, to use Edison's power during the nighttime to regenerate also.
I know the Valley has a history of interesting power requirements. One time they were testing the SR-71 and they used a bank of lights, and it took so much power they actually had to blacken out the parts of the United States in the western part and pull the power straight from Hoover Dam.
I know with several aircraft companies, I've been involved with them using a cogen station, which is using natural gas to generate power. Another option that can be looked at.
Would the city have any heartburn with them doing cogen out there? Would it have to come back for CUP?
I doubt that, but it'd certainly have to go through the city engineer's office. I don't know if it would need to come back for a hearing.
And then what does that use to us from a metric ton perspective as far as our carbon footprint? Does that increase by significant numbers, or?
That's natural gas.
So there's a negative, there's no impact, a zero impact then?
Oh, there'd be offsets. There'd be offsets.
Okay.
I know U.S. Borax uses cogen out there for their power.
Yes, I believe in several large corporations.
You're not using it out there, are you, yet?
Not yet.
You do, I think, don't you? Interesting. You also heard, I think you were here to hear the presentation on the Valley Fever and,
yes.
And the proposed, basically, grading conditions of that we have been previously imposing upon development. I went through the conditions of approval here, and I did not see those same conditions. However, in a broad brush question to you, do you find anything, based on what you heard today from staff when they presented on the requirements of potential dust mitigation requirements, do you find any of those that you couldn't live with, generally speaking?
In past projects done within the city of Lancaster, I know dust control methods are one of their top priorities with any type of grading operation. Depending on a schedule, this construction schedule will be a very tight schedule to get us operational.
Aren't
with the construction,
Aren't they all when you're
you try to
money up?
With the construction of only one building, it will leave one vacant pad, but we certainly can treat that pad with a conditioner so that it does not provide any additional dust.
Well, I think that's a standard grading condition.
That is the standard grading, right? Yeah. And during construction, we are also having to have watering trucks and
rule
ability.
AVAQMD Rule 403, 403B, all the rest of it. I mean, there's a whole parameter of requirements. The concern I have is that we want to treat everybody fairly, and the previous projects we've approved, last meeting and the meeting before, had we've applied those conditions to everyone, I believe. Have we not?
Those were projects that had an EIR associated with them.
Right. Well, it's dirt. The same ground. It's in the same sensitive area. Matter of fact, this one has a mitigation for alkali Mariposa lily, even, which apparently are on the site. Right?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah. So, I mean, does staff have any heartburn of imposing those standard conditions as recommended for grading?
Staff does not have any issues with that. The goal with the discussion earlier this evening from Ms. Garibay was that we would move forward, if that was the commission's decision, that we would move forward with adding these conditions, adding them as conditions when there is no environmental document because dirt continues to get moved, and or adding them as mitigation measures and conditions for documents or for applications that have an environmental document. So there's no issue at all.
Okay. So it's the same condition either way? Okay. All right. I don't think it'll, well, never mind. All right. Anything, do you have any questions of us?
No, I do not.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate it. Anything further from anyone? Any other speakers?
No other speakers.
All right. So close the public hearing and consider a motion.
How would we word the motion to include the requirements that Avante South had for their dust mitigation? So could we go move staff's recommendation with those dust mitigation?
Is that clear enough to where you, I mean, is it clear enough that you can do it?
It is clear enough. I just want to make sure we clarify that this would be a condition of approval, not a mitigation measure.
Right.
So just wanted to add that for the record.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you'd put it on an engineering condition, I assume, right?
We can find a category for it.
Whatever
Sure.
category, but it's not an quote environmental condition because this is a mitigated neg deck, right? Or no, it's not even
Correct.
that.
It could be a mitigation measure for future projects, but if we were to modify the mitigation, then we'd have to recirculate environmental document.
Got that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, the preliminary grading plan indicated they're moving roughly 10,000 yards of dirt. That's not small. And I don't know if that's imported or what. Doesn't say. Or it's all site generated, but as flat as that ground is out there, I don't know. It may be some import for all I know. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows? Okay. So that's a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. All right. Clear on the motion? Please vote.
Motion passes 4-1.
Okay, 4-1. All right, the next item is item number 7. This is a new public hearing on conditional use permit 18-10, which is a new restaurant project. So without objection, public hearing's open on this. We have speakers on that?
There are no speakers. However, the applicant would also like the commission to consider modifying the hours of operation for the business.
Okay. All right then. Have staff report, please.
The item before you is Let me get this. The item before you is conditional use permit 1810, a request for a Type 41 ABC license for on-sale beer and wine for Raven's Nest. The subject property is located at 42458 60th Street West within the Commercial Plan Development zoning designation. Raven's Nest would be operating within a 2,800 square foot tenant space and outdoor patio of an 11,380 square foot commercial center. It will serve food at all hours the establishment is open for business. The restaurant operating hours are from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. 7 days a week. The applicant has requested to amend condition number 2 to allow for the sale of alcoholic beverages Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Saturdays and Sundays from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. The Lancaster Sheriff's Station does not oppose the request of the issuance of an ABC license at this location. A notice of public hearing was mailed to all property owners within a 500-foot radius of the project, posted on the subject property, noticed in the newspaper. Staff was not received any opposition. Staff recommends that Planning Commission adopt Resolution Number 1821 approving CUP 18-10 and modified condition number 2 to allow for the sales of alcohol Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Saturday and Sunday from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. That concludes staff presentation, and staff and the applicant are available for questions.
Said 9 a.m.?
That's correct.
Restaurant. The restaurant hours are 9 to 11?
The restaurant hours are 8 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Brunch is what it's
So we're going to have a new breakfast spot, too?
Yes.
One could only hope.
I brought it up. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Magana. Thank you for using outside voice.
You're welcome.
You're doing good. All right. So, the applicant wants to talk to us. You're certainly welcome to. Don't have to. We like hearing from nice people. Welcome.
Good evening, Chairman Vose, Vice Chair Hall, Commissioner Harvey, Commissioner Mercy, and Commissioner Moore, and all these lovely people here tonight. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for allowing us to be here and to speak on our behalf. My family and I, we've been in the restaurant business out here we started in Lancaster, so it's going to be really nice to be back in Lancaster town again because we've been operating in Palmdale for the past 8 years. So my husband and I, we started Fresco 2 restaurant many years ago, and you know, throughout the years we have 4 children, and all of our 4 children have grown up in the restaurant industry. Also, my husband works for Northrop Grumman still, which we're still asking him to maybe retire soon someday. But anyhow, I just want to, we have a wonderful concept. It's to be in Quartz Hill. We've always loved to be on the west side, but also it's the rurality of the area. And, you know, we really feel that it's been a long time coming to have a nice sit-down breakfast, lunch, and dinner place for everybody to come and enjoy. We're very, very happy and elated to be part of the Lane family, with Mr. George Lane over here right now. We want to say thank you very much because we were approached about a year ago and we weren't ready back then, and he wasn't ready back then, so it really worked out really well for all of us. We're very looking forward for this opportunity to open up this wonderful little establishment through our children, because it's our children that carry on. And, you know, without our family, we wouldn't be doing this as long as we have. But with the support of our children who started in this business as young adults, and now they're still young adults, but they have the respect, and we really love and enjoy what we're doing and what we bring to the community of Lancaster and Palmdale, for that matter. So with that said, the Raven's Nest, the name, my husband liked that name for a long time. He always wanted to open up a place called the Raven's Nest, and so his dream has become a reality. And we're very, very happy and honored that our daughter Catherine, and along with our other children, and of course us on the outside, is that we're going to bring a very nice, innovative menu, because, you know, we were down in Oxnard for 5 years down there. So when my children wanted to go get a specific soup, they drove all the way to Santa Monica on Pacific Coast Highway. And, you know, our menu, this particular menu, is just going to be a really nice compilation of what a lot of restaurants and what a lot of families would like to come. You know, we like to take care of everybody's palate and be able to offer some really good food with excellent beers and lagers from internationally. Well, we started on Avenue L many years ago. We were doing the craft beers, and we were doing all the wonderful lagers and all the nice complements of what alcohol, but nice, beer and wine, what they could do to complement our food at this particular location. So we appreciate you hearing us, and we're really happy to be part of Lancaster again. So, the Raven's Nest.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anything further from anyone? Questions, comments?
What were the hours difference that you wanted?
I think it's an hour earlier on weekdays and 3 hours earlier on weekend. Same ending time. At least that's the way I'm reading the condition.
That's correct.
Okay. So, anything further? Close the public hearing without objection. Consider a motion.
A second.
Got to have a motion.
I'll move staff recommendation with the amendment that the hours be changed to 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday, and 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through Friday.
All right, thanks. Got it now. All right. Everyone understand the motion as modified? Yes. All right. How do you vote, please?
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you.
Good luck.
When you get your menu done, make sure you email it to city staff so they can share it with us, will you? All right. Item number 8 is conditional use permit 18-11. It's a new public hearing, so without objection, hearing's open. This is an application for a Type 2 winery. And Bruin Engineering is not moving, I was told. You have speakers on this?
There are no speakers.
We heard the staff report previously. You want to hear it again? Nope. Look at that. All right, then. Any questions of staff before we consider anything? I got all my questions answered. All right. So, nothing? Without objection, close the public hearing. Consider a motion.
So moved.
You moving the recommendation of staff?
Yes, sir.
Second.
All right. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Please vote.
Motion passes 5-0.
Perfect. Thank you. Good luck with your winery operation. Ms. Stevens, huh? All right. Unique. All right. That concludes our action items on the agenda. Ms. De La Cruz?
Yes, just a couple of items tonight. First and foremost, I should have done this on Monday, but I failed to do so. I'd like to introduce our newest staff member, Mitzi Alvarado, who is sitting with us in the audience.
Miss Alvarado, stand up so we can see you. Welcome.
Ms. Alvarado joined us last Monday as our newest associate planner, replacing Mr. Christopher Ani, who abandoned us. But we are very excited to have Mitzi join the group. Mitzi joins us from the city of Santa Clarita. Previously, she also worked for the city of Baldwin Park, and Mitzi is from the area. She grew up in Lancaster, and she's still living in the community, so it's really wonderful to have a local native coming back and working for this community. So I'd like to introduce her and welcome her to the team, and you will be seeing more of Mitzi in the coming months.
We certainly will. And welcome. And you have an outside voice? Good.
The other item I wanted to mention is a couple of months ago we mentioned about training as part of the commission had asked before about some training opportunities, and we have been coordinating with our Human Resources Department on getting you all access. There's a little glitch in the system where we're not allowed to generate multiple logins, and so we're coordinating with them to get us as many as they can, and then they would need to be shared amongst the commission. So we would set up a system where you would have a certain amount of time to go through the trainings at your leisure. And currently we have 2 licenses. So the goal would be that you each would have about 2-3 weeks to go through the training, and then you would be cut off, and then the next person would have access. So yeah, you just get cut off. But we'll coordinate. Ms. Reyes and I will coordinate and send you login information and access to that. So that was one update. And then just another reminder that our August meeting will be on August 27th, 5 p.m. Our meeting on the 20th would be canceled due to a lack of quorum. But those of you that will be at the fair, we will see you at the fair. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. So the August 13th staff briefing is still appropriate?
Correct. The agenda review would still remain on the 13th, and we would adjourn to the following 2 weeks out.
2 weeks out, 27th.
Correct.
Okay.
Did we have any report on the other medical cannabises that we were talking about last Monday?
Yes, I did have that. So, as you all know, this one that was approved this evening would be number 7. And there is one that is on appeal currently. I did share that with the commission. That is scheduled to go before the city council on August 14th at their only meeting in August. And Chairman Vos also asked just kind of the overall status of the applications and building permits. And so far, there's only one that is close enough to where they have an approved tenant improvements. They can actually come in and pull their tenant improvements, and that's for the Onion 1 facility over at H6 and Trevor. This was approved by Planning Commission back in August of 2017. And this one also had some complications with respect to Edison and getting power. And so they've looked at opportunities for generators on site. They submitted an application to the city where it was approved administratively for generators that would accommodate their power needs. So that's really the only one that's gotten that close to permit issuance and becoming
real. You have to wonder, and maybe I have a jaded view of development since I'm involved with it in my professional life, but one would assume you would do due diligence to determine if your utility source is adequate for your project before you acquired the dirt or spent tens of thousands of dollars to get to the point of bringing a project forward to us and then say, oh my God, I don't have water, gas, electricity. What a waste.
Well, Onion 1 was a refrigerator, so it looked to me like that thing would probably have lots of amps of juice.
Well, I'm not sure if that is in fact the case.
3,000 amps at 440 volts is a lot of energy.
Oh, that's a lot of juice, you bet, but I don't know, who knows what the existing power is there. But to assume that the Fox Field corridor had adequate power.
And then to find out it doesn't.
Amazing. Editorial comment. So the cost of the application for a medical cannabis license that the city collects up front, does that cover the net cost of processing?
No. I can tell you no. The fee study that was done last year, at the beginning of last year, 2017, that accompanied the ordinance when it was presented, introduced at City Council, based on my tracking the amount of time I alone am spending on the cannabis applications and just the implementation of the entire thing, doesn't even begin to cover it. It is my understanding that this fiscal year, the city is going to be doing a citywide comprehensive fee study. They do that every several years, and this is the year to do it. The cannabis costs are going to be very carefully reassessed, and I'm sure increased significantly. The license application itself is $1,244, and there's just no way. And frankly, I think the CUP fee for a cannabis CUP is probably requires much more time than a standard CUP for other kinds of uses. That would be my guess. I could be wrong. So I think we're way off on our costs right now, but we're going to be looking into that, and we'll pick that up moving forward.
That's 4 or 5 hours is all that is. I mean, that's all it would equate to.
Yeah.
I mean, when you figure salary and burden and overhead, I mean, my God.
There's a lot we didn't know when we did it.
And the reason I bring it up, I mean, you know, the tens of thousands of dollars an applicant would spend just to get to the point of having a hearing. And internally, you know, we want to be business friendly, but to give away the store, I mean, it's just nuts. Whatever. Glad they're going to have the study.
Are we going to also look into why there's not enough power?
You know, that's called the risk of development, Randy. I mean, my God.
Nothing at all.
You can't handhold everybody.
Well,
That's another editorial comment. I mean, for God's sake, you know, when I cite development for clients, I mean, that's part of the due diligence. I mean, at a minimum.
Correct. The one thing that we have started doing just out of courtesy to the applicants is early on in the process, in the ones that are in the queue currently, now that we know that there is a significant issue, we have asked our applicants to go back and do their due diligence and identify if they will need power, if they'll need to have generators, and to be proactive in coordinating with Edison and even identifying it on their site plan early on so that we know and can thoroughly analyze the impact of the generators on site as part of the environmental review.
A while back, one of the developers bought water from a farmer and shipped it down by aqueduct so he could have water for his project. They can't do that with LCE, can they?
I don't know.
It's not the power, it's the
transmission.
Thank you. It's just not sufficient to juice it all. So it really is an Edison issue, and what we've been hearing is that Edison is not going to be prepared in that particular area for at least 2 or 3 years. So that's why they have to look alternatively.
Even though the developer user will be paying for it. They'll be paying for the upsizing of the lines and the transformers and all the rest of it. I mean, that's all part of the cost that Edison's going to charge you for service. But if it's not in their budget, I mean, they've got hundreds of millions of dollars exposed from the fires up north. And if anybody's tracking their stock portfolio, one would be a little concerned about the private utility.
You know, this is just business school 101, just doing due diligence. I just thought I'd add my commentary as well since we were talking about it. Just really?
I mean, we're all
I-
involved with the reviews. We spend hours reviewing what staff has put together over hundreds of hours of work to basically, gee whiz, there's 7 applications, 7 approvals, and one might get operational, and it's been how many years? A while.
And Vice Chair Hall is asking if we need to spoon feed them, really? I mean, really? Be more rigid like I am. No sympathy.
You know, I don't know. But we certainly ought to be getting a net cost covered. That's for sure. I mean, we're goofing around with shopping carts for crying out loud. All right. Well, listen. All right, then we stand adjourned. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry.
There
We have
was
public-
one.
I'm sorry. We have public comment. Yikes. Mr. Mercy, you could leave, and then there's the first one out the door, but the other 4 have to stay. That's the deal? That's the rule? All right, I'm sorry.
That's okay. We did have a speaker on the non-agendized portion of the agenda.
Okay.
That's Ruth Morales.
All right. Good evening, Miss Morales.
Good evening. I promise not to take too much of your time. I know we all want to go home. Good evening.
You're not from Antelope Valley College, are you?
No, I'm not. I work at Tarzana Treatment Center. My name is Ruth Morales. I'm the program coordinator for Tarzana Treatment Center. I'm here on behalf to talk a little bit about the alcohol density and the waiver issue that you guys had talked about at the previous email or previous meeting. The focus of work that we do is environmental prevention to reduce access and availability for youth amongst alcohol-related, just alcohol. So I wanted to bring you a little bit more information on where you guys can get information on alcohol outlet density and how it correlates to health issues in the community. According to the public health approach, environmental prevention focuses on change aspects of the environment that contribute to negative health behaviors such as the use of alcohol and drugs by limiting access, changing the norms, and changing public policy. So that's how the city comes into play, right? So you guys make the laws and businesses are supposed to follow them. So some of the work that we do is we train establishments, RBS, so responsible beverage service training. We have a social host ordinance that holds parents and any person that even gives them the opportunity to have a party where there's alcohol given at these gatherings. So our approach is just looking at the environmental approach. So what we come today to ask the city is to really look into how are the waivers, how applicants being waived based on the alcohol outlet density. To my understanding, the reason behind it is we want to create a balance. We wanted to look more into the public policy and practices, so these applicants aren't just being waived, so there's more concentration of alcohol outlets within our community. Based on LA County data, public health, and off-sale establishments are 3.7 times more likely to have higher violent crimes. So I'm here today just to kind of, bring that to your attention, to look into more of how you guys are approving applicants, if it's looking into alcohol restrictions use ordinance, or, having more of a conversation with people that do prevention work within the community and looking in the public health aspect of it as well. Thank you.
Do you have a sheet that you wanted to share with us with the links or email?
I don't, but I can email you the information of where I received the information of the alcohol outlet density.
That would be great. Could you send it to them?
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morales. Do you have another speaker?
There are no speaker cards.
That's it? Okay.
Get up.
So we stand adjourned till Monday, August 13th at 4:30 p.m. here in the chambers. Thank you all for your efforts tonight and hard work.